Directing traffic, gonna go deep, has a man deep, it is caught for the touchdown, Corey Davis!
What do? Attacks leverage. If he's outside leverage, he doesn't want you to beat him outside. So stem towards him, hold him outside, stamp outside. Drive face, full cell vertical, get into the blind spot, and he absolutely burns him. Corner is lost. He literally has no idea where Wilson is.
Really high floor, really high ceiling. We could be talking about the best corner in the league. Sauce can do that.
This is actual film. This is actual football talk. It's a football show. We're supposed to talk football, not storylines.
And we are back, Kyle Smith. It's been a good 2 weeks since we've done a show. A little bit of life stuff coming up. So I'm sorry for the delay. I'm sorry for everybody who saw the Jets-Jaguars post-game stream coming. I was not able to figure out how to get the stream done at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning with my wife and my dog sleeping. I was a little bit intoxicated, so I got some beer streaming muscles, I guess we could say. But Kyle, I miss you. I miss the chat. What's up, man?
Nothing much, Joe. It's a little depressing seeing where we've gone. I mean, listen, dude. So being at that Jags game, Zach Wilson had already been playing like dog shit way before that, and just thinking like, man, we really missed out on him. And then, like, was that Lawrence's best game? I assume not, but just watching the all 22, like, dude, that he's got such a quick release, man, and he made so many plays with his legs. Granted, we said this many times on our stream, like, watching Zach's college tape, because there was a lot to like there, kind of made us say like, all right, well, Wilson might have the higher ceiling and stuff, but retrospect, man, like, oh man, missing out on him really sucks. The position we're in right now. So listen, aside from football stuff, I'm doing pretty good right now in life. But when you're as big of football fans as you and I are, and as many of the people who follow this stream are, and you're a Jets fan, it kind of sucks.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack. I hope everybody had a good holiday season, obviously. But yeah, the fact that Braden Mann lost us, Trevor Lawrence. We were going into the Lions game, which Kyle didn't tell me he was going to be at. That's a story for a different day. Like, you're going to the Lions game
the day before myself.
And it's like, okay, we got to win 3 out of 4 of these games. The Lions are a tough opponent, but we should be able to beat them. At the end of the day, if the Jets want to be a playoff team, they should be able to beat a Lion team that's a little bit hot, but still, they're the Lions, and it's a Lions team that got absolutely boat raced by the freaking Panthers this week. So it's not like they're some new coming of Jesus or something like that, by the way. And then you're going into the Jaguars game, and it's like, well, shit, okay, we got to win 3 in a row. Is what it is. But unfortunately, Zach Wilson's playing. But okay, it can still happen. It's still the Jaguars. They've beat some good teams, but it's still the Jaguars. Let's embrace the positivity, and let's end on a 3-game win streak. Nope. Miserable, wet. It wasn't so cold. I've been to colder games, but that game was absolutely brutal. And I have some stats. Like, they scored 5 out of their first 6 drives. It was pretty ridiculous from a defensive perspective, from an offensive perspective. And you have guys like, Quincy Williams, sometime in the third quarter, it's like 16-3, and he makes a tackle for loss, and he's doing his celebration.
Yeah.
And I'm screaming where I was sitting. They didn't hear me, but I was screaming. I was losing it. So, if I did that stream Friday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, it would be a lot different than where I am now, because obviously we had 2 really, really shitty weeks in a row where we didn't necessarily come on and talk right after the games. And then the football gods gifted us with a bunch of losses, obviously with the Pats losing multiple games, the Dolphins now losing 3 in a row. So the Jets are in the thick of it, obviously, assuming that the Patriots lose one of their next 2 games. So we're in a situation now where most likely, if we win, we're 2 games, we're in the playoffs, and with Mike White coming back, it's a whole new vibe in Jets land. But holy shit, those 2 weeks were absolutely brutal with Zach Wilson back at quarterback, which, by the way, I want to see all the people who are in here defending Zach Wilson. And trust me, and there's plenty of streamers too, Twitter people who are, oh, the Jets were 5-2 without Wilson. You guys are being too harsh on him. Okay, well, where are they at now? Because Zach Wilson is not it, Kyle.
Not at all. And did it take a game on nationally televised TV for like the whole football watching world to see just how bad he is? When, he didn't put up a single touchdown, to like really say, okay, yeah, like now it's time to move off of him. It's really bad, man. It's really bad. And we're going to talk about the Lions game in a little bit too, but even though you just look at the stat line in that game and you say, what was it? 2 touchdowns. He had the 1 big throw, even some people say, oh, it was a pro day throw or whatever, okay. there was some things to like in that game, but overall, there's a lot of bad in that game too, despite the stat line. I mean, that Lions defense, especially their secondary, is really bad, man. They let receivers run wide open all day.
Yeah, the throw and the hiccup concept that they made famous at the BYU Pro Day, with that post or the corner post, a ball that's a little bit underthrown, to be completely honest. But we're not gonna get into that. But yeah, I want to say hello to some people in the chat again. I'm sorry for I was in the game and I was like, dude, I'm so fucking pissed right now. I'm gonna do a stream during the game, and I'm literally like trying to type on my phone, and it was so soaking wet out that I couldn't even type shit on my phone.
It was hard.
And then after the game, like, you know what, dude, I gotta go home. I gotta let my frustrations out. Like I said, a stream for 1:30 in the morning. I was on the bus like nodding out. I'm like, no, this is not gonna happen. And then I wake up the next morning and I see like a bunch of people like commenting like, where is he? What the hell? What's going on? I'm so pissed. All this stuff. So again, I apologize for the people who are waiting for that. The 2 or 3 of you that are most likely in there. Chris says good to see Blessington and Narnia back together. I forget if I was Blessington or you were Narnia, but I forget the exact framework of that joke, but that's what Chris has been saying. Joe Nelson, I've been waiting for my weekly therapy. I don't know if we're so much a therapy option, Kyle. I saw this obviously a little bit before we started, because I feel like if it's bad, we kind of tell you it's bad, and if it's good, we tell you it's good. So if you're expecting us to say good stuff about the Jets, maybe it's not necessarily your stream. But with that being said, Mike White, I have faith that they can win the next 2 games. I legitimately do, especially if Tua is going to be out next week, which we'll discuss obviously in a coming week. Now, is Tua at this point worse than Teddy Bridgewater? Again, a conversation for a different day. And then we have some Derek Carr stuff to talk about. We have some quarterback options to at least brush over on the stream. So we have a lot to talk about in the next 2 or so hours. So what's up, Joe? What's up, Blake? What a ride the season has been. A lot of ups and a lot of downs. I feel like it's more like, if people know like Six Flags Great Adventure, it's more like Nitro. Like the beginning of the season, the beginning of the season, kind of like the takeoff. It was kind of not up or down. It's kind of flat. And then we're up all the way to 5-2, Kyle, and boom, down to 7-8. Like, we've lost 4 games in a row. We've lost 5 out of 6 games. Like, we are on the down portion still of the season. Now we have a chance to recover the last 2 weeks of the season. But we were saying a couple of weeks ago, if they didn't win at least 10 games, it'd be a disappointment, right? So even if they win the next 2 games, I'm not going to say that they're necessarily finished as strongly as they should have, while also acknowledging that they're at this point now. And if they win 2 games, then great. Hopefully they make the playoffs at 9-8. But this is not what we were expecting at 5-2 or 6-3, right? So
no, not at all. Yeah. But shit, like if they kind of miraculously make the playoffs, which just from I mean, it is very possible. Although I almost want to say I'm not expecting it, because I feel like they're gonna fuck it up with one of these games. Yeah. But if they do make the playoffs, anything can happen. We've seen tons of teams. God, I wanted to throw up 2011 when the 9-7 Giants went on to win the Super Bowl, the whole thing. If you get in the tournament, like even the Bengals last year, they were like 10-7, right? Like, a lot of losses. They made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So like, yeah. And listen, I think a flawed head coach at the Bengals, and a very flawed offensive line. So it's not like, I mean, like, yeah, the Jets have holes, but you get in the dance, anything can happen. And, the football is all about matchups too. I almost want to say, like, are the Chiefs, we're probably going to Kansas City. Is that a bad matchup for the Jets? Well,
no, we be the 7th seed most likely. And
yeah, I guess I'm saying Kansas City's probably going to be the 2 though, because Buffalo's probably going to get the 1.
If Buffalo wins out, are they the 1? Is that what it is? But
because Buffalo has the tiebreaker over Kansas City, they beat them like week 6 or whatever.
I don't really like. I would probably play Buffalo. I'd rather play Buffalo. Obviously, we have to win 2 games before we're talking about that, because it's a division opponent. Both times we played them tough. Now, can the Buffalo Bills lose to the Bengals this week? I think pretty easily. So let's root for the Bengals this week. I'd rather play the Buffalo Bills than the Chiefs. I don't know if the Jets have necessarily like the speed to keep up with that type of offense. But nonetheless, let's win 2 games before
we don't have Cheetah anymore, man. I mean, Kelsey would be really concerning though. Anyway, we're getting really ahead of ourselves right now, though.
Yeah.
What the hell was your question that made me even go off on that tangent? Okay, I was saying, like, yeah, I mean, listen, there is something to be said for, Mike White. Like, clearly the players kind of like him. Now, part of that is based on, like, they've won a couple games with him. If they started losing a couple games with Mike White, would that, Mike effing White, would that vibe die down, and maybe the players don't believe in him as much? Maybe, I mean, like, listen, they definitely believe in him to an extent, and players know, the coaches are going to make it known, hey, listen, you guys still got a very good shot at the playoffs. the team's going to come out and have energy, but there's still some big concerns there, right? Like, go to the Lions game, blown fourth down. You blew that one late. The defense against the Jags, there's
Terrible.
a lot. Yeah. Terrible. Where's the pass rush been? Blown coverages, right? Just, little simple guys getting out on slide routes and people just not picking them up quick. So
if I was on the team playing the Jets, I do a lot of condensed formations and a lot of like switch releases and depend on the linebackers and the slot corners to pass guys off, because the Jets struggle with that big time. And the defense, like the Lions game, and again, people understand from Sunday at 1:00 till about Sunday at 5:00, ignore what I tweet, because people take it way too seriously, especially about the game. Kyle, you know what it is. But the Lions game, it's if you want to be an elite defense, you don't give up a 51-yard touchdown to frickin' Tom Smith, Kyle Smith, whatever the hell that guy's name was, because I never heard of him. Like it's some backup scrub who's running for 51 yards for a game-winning touchdown. Like, you got to step up in big moments. And then say what you want about the Jags game, and I actually wrote it down, which I don't have my notes up right now, but they scored out of 5 out of 6 drives to start the game, and the only drive they didn't score on was when Quinnen Williams, strip sack, and the Jets are in the red zone and sack and field goal. And then at that point, it's like, maybe not our game. You could feel it right there. Like, they get a sack, field goal. It's like, oh shit, here it comes. But the defense has to take their head out of their ass. The offensive line has to take their head out of their ass. The running backs
really bad.
The running backs to a certain extent have to take their heads out of their ass. Donovan Knight was nice for a couple of weeks. He's been missing some gaps the last couple of weeks. While I like him, I'll acknowledge that, but he missed. I don't know if it was this game or last game. I have it in my notes, but they ran a toss to the right, and there's an easy lane inside and like the C gap, and he cuts to the outside and lets himself get tackled instead of taking the C gap. So the entire team, for the most part, has to take their head out of their ass. The pass rush, the run defense, the linebackers, the safeties, the corners have been pretty consistently good. Sauce hasn't been targeting what feels like 10 weeks at this point. I know he gave up like one catch last week, but he's been quiet on film, which is obviously great. But a frustrating couple of weeks, Kyle. Obviously, Pat's games, the Vikings games, the Bills game, all of it. But they have a chance now to right their wrongs and to win 2 games and get to the fucking playoffs. Like, let's stop with the chicken shit. Like, I'm just so done with losing after the high that was the high in the beginning of the season. And like, we can acknowledge that in the beginning of the season, we said that, would you rather a team that's like 7-10, but led by a good quarterback play, but there's blunders elsewhere, or like a 10-7 team that's good defense, good team, but not a good quarterback? And we said 7-10 and the good quarterback, right? It's like, we might be that 9-8 team that's led by, not necessarily a quarterback. And we'll talk about Mike White. And I know there's going to be questions about Mike White. And I saw the super chat about Mike White, which we'll get into. We'll get into the quarterback options. I'm going to get through the rest of the chat a little bit. We're going to fly through the Lions game, like quarterback thoughts, offensive thoughts, defensive thoughts, coaching, and then get right by that, because I know people don't want to hear about it a lot, but I can't just not talk about the Lions game at all. Hawks talking about, Mike White being the quarterback, maybe a new OC, Christian. What's up? Season coming down to the wire. Who will come on top? Eagles been hyping up the fantasy playoffs for days now. It's me versus him. So
for the championship,
congratulations on Eagle getting there. I got there. Just nobody really cares about fantasy. If I got there without Jalen Hurts and Jonathan Taylor in a 16-team league, how that happened, I have no fucking idea. But I got there. So thank God. Phil C, let's go boys. Playoffs are back on the menu. People talk about Mike White and quickly, Kyle. Let's say he even leads us to the playoffs, to the first round of the playoffs. He plays well the next 2 games and leads us. Is 9 games, 10 games enough of a sample size? And the thing for that whole situation is, and I put it on Twitter this week because I hate Twitter. I really do. I'm starting to hate it. Like, I put up a Jordan Whitehead thing this week, and people like attack me for saying Jordan Whitehead's not worth his contract or he should not be here next year. But nonetheless, you have a quarterback who, he might be impressive in 10 games, but it's only 10 games, and it's 10 games with 2 injuries. And again, if the Jets were in a situation where right now they're going to be 6-10, 5-11, they had multiple years of low contracts. They didn't really know what they're doing with their roster. They could afford a year or 2 of buffer to really figure to kind of making that push for the playoffs for the Super Bowl. Then yes, I would understand it. Right now, the Jets, with a playoff caliber roster next year, hopefully making a deep run in 2023, 2024, I feel like you really have to capitalize. And I'm not saying no. I'm saying right now, my feeling is I can't bank on Mike White being the guy to lead the Jets to the Super Bowl. So I'm looking externally at this point is my mindset. I don't know where your where you sit on that?
I mean, aside from him just, let's say he absolutely lights it up the next 2 weeks and then brings you to the Super Bowl, and let's say he loses in the Super Bowl but plays out of his mind. Okay, then, but I mean, the chances of that happening are like slim to none.
What's the level of play though? Is it like Vikings, Bills, like Mike White, where it's hopefully obviously more efficient in the red zone, 300-ish yards? Like obviously it's hard to quantify with stats because stats can mean completely different things.
He would have to play a lot better than that. Like he'd have to play like to the point where like he's just clicking through his reads so quick and he's not missing any throws. And like, he'd kind of have to be like think about like 2016 Brady, like how good he was in those playoffs, how good he was in that comeback against the Falcons. Like if Mike White is going to be good, and I'm not comparing him to the greatest of all time, but like he's going to have to win the way that like Tom Brady does, because he's not a mobile guy. He's kind of like a little bit of a statue. He's probably a little bit more mobile than Brady, to be honest. But, he's a guy who's going to have to win with, smart mind, accurate throws, getting the ball out on time, things like that, seeing the defense well, calling out, changing protections and things like that. That's the way he's going to win. He's not going to win like the way we expected Zach Wilson, which, like that's what's frustrating me so much about Zach Wilson, man. Like in that Jags game, he had several opportunities to make the off script play, Garrett Wilson running wide open downfield, just can't hit him. Like he just didn't make any of those throws that we saw him make at BYU. Anyway, Mike White's going to have to win like that. And like, so like you pointed out in which I saw probably, 4 days ago or something like that. I watched your film review of the Bills, and I'd watched that review. I watched the film myself probably like a week before that. But you had pointed out a couple instances in that game where like not only did Mike White miss some throws, but he also just missed some reads too. So like he would have to be like almost like flawless in that like area of the game for me to say like, okay, like we really should bank on him for this year going forward and give him the big time bucks. But
the thing is like, and again, like this is such a large thing to unpack, and obviously we have much time to do it. Even though I know the whole Carr thing has to come to light pretty soon after the Super Bowl, but which we'll have about a month or so. Maybe the Jets are in the Super Bowl. We don't have any time to talk about it. That's obviously the preferred method, but it's not just is Mike White good enough to lead the Jets to wins. It's Mike White versus Derek Carr versus whoever we want to say, Aaron Rodgers versus Minshew versus Garoppolo versus Brady, whatever options you want to throw into the pot. For a Super Bowl run, because listen, at the end of the day, like, and I see what Hawks is saying in here. Like, if Mike White has a full season to prepare as a starter, all that, then he'll look great. Which, to some extent, like I get that, but he also had plenty of years to prepare, and he looked like absolute balls in the preseason. So it doesn't just necessarily correlate to being a very good quarterback. And he's a quarterback who, regardless of what you're going to say, has faced 2 injuries since he's been starting. And I'll excuse the one. Obviously, he's getting speared by Matt Milano, whose ribs are not going to crush like that, But still, you're banking a Super Bowl on Mike White being better than Derek Carr. You're banking a Super Bowl on Mike White being better than potentially. I know Aaron Rodgers' contract is crazy, but Rodgers, Carr, blah 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 blah. All those guys that we're going to talk about in the future. So we'll see.
Has Derek Carr missed any games in his career at all? I'm asking the question. I don't know. I don't ever remember him being injured and missing a game. And that's
not to my knowledge. And obviously with them benching him and him not going to practice, it's all but likely that they're going to trade or release him.
Don't they have to make that decision like a day or two after the Super Bowl or something like that?
It's like 3 or 4 games after the Super Bowl. His contract becomes guaranteed. So, and people are like, oh, well, why not just wait for him to get cut, because they don't owe him. No. Sorry. Why don't they just wait for him to be released? Because they don't want to pay him that money. They're going to cut him because another team's going to come and throw a 3rd round pick, a 2nd round pick, whatever they're going to have to do. People are talking about a Carr and Adams package. That would be insanely expensive for the Jets to do. I don't think they'd be able to do it. They got to cut Lawson and JFM and Laken Tomlinson and all these guys even to fit that under the cap space. So I don't think
not if you couldn't find a way to rework their contracts.
We'll get into that in the future. Marvin Guns, what's up? Why are we talking next year? What's up, fellas? Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you. What's up, Yoshi? Joe Kyle, what's up, gentlemen? Hope you had a good Christmas. Yeah, good Christmas. I worked. Kyle, I hope you had a good holiday season as well. Hello from San Francisco. Lawrence looks so good. Yeah, it'd be nice if we just had Lawrence, right? And we didn't have to talk about any quarterback stuff at this point. But my guys, I know it's risky buying rookie contract jerseys, but I had to get a Wilson 17 jersey. I think that's one of the safer ones to get right now. Wilson, Sauce, Q. Yeah, I think it's probably the top 3 safest. But is it official? Can we finally call Zach a bust and move on, Kyle? Thoughts on that? I'm going to catch up in the chat. We're going to do lightning the next 16
I don't think he'll ever be
minutes
good
of
with the Jets.
Yeah.
Personally, I think if let's say that he is traded and the Jets are able to get let's say it would be kind of miraculous even if they can get a mid-round pick. But let's say they were able to get a mid-round pick, or he's part of a Derek Carr package trade or whatever. If he could sit for a long time and really learn under someone good and really kind of just do some soul searching and really just, what was the LaFleur comment today that he's got some lower body mechanics things he's got to work through or something like that. Like he would need a lot of time to just really sit and reflect and learn all that stuff. And he's just seeing the game so slow. Like I almost want, listen, personally, myself, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was really young. It's like, I had an IEP when I was in school and I'm a teacher now and stuff. So, I kind of get all that. And there was a whole reports where, Zach, like he has ADHD and, it's hard for him to focus on some things, but he supposedly he could focus on football really well because that's interesting to him. I don't want to speculate. And like, I do, there is a part of me that wonders if he's just that bright when it comes to football. Like, because he's just not seeing the field well at all and hasn't all season. He's slow to everything. He just doesn't like that interception that he threw against the Lions. Like the corner was in the deep third the whole time. He never moved off the spot. Why would Zach make that throw? Like literally, I was in the stands in the game, watching the game. And the moment that he released the ball, I was like, oh no. Like literally, I said that. You could ask God.
What play was this?
The interception that he threw against the Lions. Like I knew the moment he released that ball where he was going because I could see I had a good angle for where it was.
Oh yeah.
That was so bad, that interception. That was man.
He just assumed that deep third corner was going to carry that and just never checked it at all. And the thing with that play was too, Garrett Wilson was initially open on the dig. Like he should have hit that off the jump anyway. He should have never even got his eyes to Elijah Moore. So
there was a lot of play. His first big throw to Garrett Wilson in that game, like eventually it was completed, but he actually waited way too long. And if it's like, I'm sorry, if it was a better defense, like I said, it was a Belichick coach defense, that opening, it would have been shut down so much quicker. But the Lions, like, and I know Aaron Glenn is like their D coordinator or whatever, but they have some real big problems in their secondary. But anyway, I mean, like, so I just wonder how smart Zach is. I really question his football IQ, so to speak. I
don't like it. It's hard to say.
It's a big confidence thing too.
It's hard to say that because, like, I think you could be smart. Like, you can have people who break down tape, but then once you get on the field and shit's flying and you have 300-pound guys running at you, like, do you panic? I think it's more panic than him being stupid. Like
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think it's both with him, and the reason I say that is, take, for example, the Denver game too. That was another really bad one by him. Just think about so he had so many throws that were like, that first throw of the game. How high did he sail that over? Who was it? Corey Davis's head?
I think it's officially 68 yards over his head.
Yeah, it was okay. So something like that, I think is just okay. Poor mechanics because, he's just, I don't know, like scared and like he's thinking too much or whatever. So like, I think that's definitely part of it. Like, the yips, so to speak. But I think another part of it is just like, take, for example, the sack that he took. He never saw that defender, Cisco or whatever his name was, the first sack in the red zone against the Jags.
The thing with and we'll talk about the sack in the red zone, the Jag or no, that's was that the Lions or the Jags?
No, this was the Jags game. This was like the first drive for the Jets.
The thing with that is like, and Michael LaFleur has to eat some shit here too, because like, why are we sending 4 vertical routes versus a pressure look? Like he didn't really have many options to get the ball out on that play either. Like he could have slid, and I think there was a check down maybe underneath like a running back or a tight end. But like Michael LaFleur is running way too many vertical concepts with a quarterback who struggles versus pressure. So Michael LaFleur, I now there's a certain point where like his bad quarterback really obviously makes his offense look worse than it is. He's not some guru at times, that is for sure. Like I think he's more like a mid for lack of a better term, but he's mid with a bad quarterback, which is leading to terrible offensive outings. But there are some times like going empty. We talked about that whole game versus the Vikings, but like going empty on 3rd and shorts, vertical routes on 3rd and shorts with a quarterback who struggles against pressure with not many options to get the ball out. Like, so I think Samini put it on Twitter, wherever he put it out, like, oh, he should have got to his hot read there, or somebody said he had to get to his hot read there. But like, where was his hot read? They're all vertical. So he throws the ball out of bounds, takes intentional grounding there. So like,
my question for you, and I don't know this, maybe you know more than me. Does Zach have the ability, like how much freedom does he have to change play calls and to make hot routes and things like that?
I know they have like I know that in some instances they have like the can ability, but I don't know how much. I don't think they have a ton of freedom, because you even heard Mike White say it a couple of weeks ago, like they don't set the protections for the offensive line. Like the protection is the protection. They have to adjust to said protection, which I think is personally idiotic. Like that you can't change your protection if you're not giving your quarterback that ability, because they can obviously come out in a crazy front where whatever you call is never going to work. Even if you know it's coming, it's not going to work. But with that being said, I don't think they have a ton of freedom. I know they have the can ability to change one play to another.
So this is why football's so complicated, and it's so hard to always blame just one thing. I mean, like part of that's coaching. Like, why would you not want your quarterback to have that ability? But then part of it, you also have to wonder too, is the coaching staff not give him that ability because they don't trust his football IQ, so to speak. Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm just posing that question because that's concerning. If Tom Brady was the quarterback of this team, he would have that ability, right? If Aaron Rodgers, if you had a veteran like that,
So Kyle, this is Joe Nelson, Joe and Kyle. If you're Joe D, what are you doing with the quarterback position this offseason? Give me and listen, we're going to do this such a shallow conversation, and we have to dive into it so much more. But like, what is your option 1 and 2 right now at this point in time for the Jets quarterback position in the offseason?
Are you talking about like what I want most, or what's most like realistic and what makes most sense?
I think
what would I do if I was Joe Douglas?
I think you have to factor in realism, because like I would say for me, like, oh well, let's get Aaron Rodgers, but then are they trading him? He's gonna cost like $50-60 million a year, whatever it is. So how realistic is Rodgers? It's probably not very realistic. So while I prefer his level of quarterback play, how much is it really realistic? So you kind of have to factor in some realism.
You're gonna have, and I was telling Eagle this on Thursday night. We were chatting on Twitter, but I think for Aaron Rodgers, you're looking at least 2 ones at minimum. Like I know they want to get that contract off the books too. Well, more they do.
Mm-hmm.
But so you're gonna have to trade the world. And they asked him, like, I don't know, mid-season or whatever, like, are you going to do X amount of more years like Tom Brady? He just laughed and said no. And he's a guy that clearly has interests outside of football. So it's like, you're going to trade the house in terms of draft capital and paying that huge contract. And then what is he going to pull Brett Favre and only play for a year or two for you? Like, especially like if you don't win, does that make him want to retire? I mean, I still think he can really play. I've been saying that all season. I don't think the problems really this season are mostly out from him.
I think he's checked out at sometimes too.
Yeah, maybe, but he's still insanely talented. So if you could get him on some, like you wouldn't have to like trade a lot, that would be number one, but I just don't see that being realistic at all. Tom Brady, is he going to retire? I know some people are speculating that he is, but then again, like I wonder, like, everyone saw that clip where he was talking to Cristiano Ronaldo, and Ronaldo was like, "Are you done?" And Brady was like, and this is like right before Brady like announced that he was unretiring, and then like this whole thing that he went through this divorce, and they've been speculating for years that like Brady's love for football has been causing a rift between him and Giselle, and anyway, so the fact that they finally said, okay, we're filing for a divorce now, like, okay, so he's getting divorced from his family and now he's going to retire. Like, I feel like he probably still wants to play another year or two.
Yeah.
I am much more pro Brady than I am Derek Carr. So I would say Brady 1 realistically, Derek Carr 2. I think Brady is just a better player, period. And I don't think his contract will have to be as much either.
I'm not.
I like Derek Carr much better than Jimmy G. For several reasons.
I think that Brady goes to, I think 1 of 3 spots. Wherever Sean Payton goes is one of them. I think Miami may be an option depending on what they're doing with Tua. And I could see him going to Las Vegas if they move on. To be quick about it, and then Kyle, you have to do your duty and we do the super chats. But if Rodgers was in any sense realistic, where it was okay, they could renegotiate his contract. It was more attainable, like stuff like that. And you need to trade a little bit for him. Okay, that's probably my number 1. But past that, I don't think that's really overly realistic. I would say Carr is my number 2. Again, I don't think one bad year makes up for the 8 or 9 pretty solid years he's had. And I don't think you have to trade too much for him. Past that, Brady, I could stomach it if it happened. I would have a really tough time. The fact that he's gonna be 47 years old, like I want a little bit longer term of an answer. So I would put Carr above him. I would say another underrated option that people aren't really talking about. It depends on how Mike White finishes, and we're obviously doing this conversation very prematurely because he can come out and ball out, and his contract could be $15 million a year. He can come out and get hurt again. His contract could be $8 million a year. Like there's still a lot of wiggle room, kind of with the contract and what it's going to be. But right now, I think another option would be like, okay, you bring in Jimmy G, and you bring back Mike White. Because they're both, they both been injured. Jimmy G wouldn't be overly expensive, I don't think, because of some of his injuries. And I think if Mike White doesn't prove that he could be the quarterback of the future, you bring him and Jimmy G in, and then you kind of see what happens from there. People talk about Minshew and White. Listen, if you go into the season next year with Minshew and White, at this point right now, I'm very disappointed with where the Jets roster is. I was not a big fan of watching Minshew when I was watching Keelan Cole tape. I don't think he's as good as his stats indicate he is. But nonetheless, let's move on to the super chats. Okay. And that's very, very shallow of a conversation. Right now, my personal feeling is Carr is the most realistic, and Carr is my probably my number one option. And
I think there's a lot to like about Carr's game. Yeah. I think the big knock for him, and this is honestly a knock that he's improved maybe a little bit from his college days, is he just never really deals well with pressure that well. Like he's a guy who he's willing to like kind of dirt the ball rather than like take a hit. Like one thing you kind of like about Mike White is he stood in the pocket and took those hits. Carr's he gets a little gun shy with some of the pressure, but he does a really good harmony, stays healthy, and there's a lot to like there. Leadership and stuff. Okay.
I see somebody in the chat really quickly. Jets X Factor. What about Ryan Tannehill? I hate Ryan Tannehill. I've been saying he's overrated since he's been in pretty much been anything in the league. I didn't like Tannehill at all. So absolutely not.
I'm telling you, man, that is one thing that you've been off on for years. Tannehill is not a bad player, man. Like if you think you all right, so let me ask you a question. You think Derek Carr is like decently better than Ryan Tannehill?
I do.
You're wrong about that.
Okay, continue. Let's just go to the super chats. We have a lot to talk about. All
right. So Andrew, for $2, thank you. Andrew says, if Mike White takes us to the playoffs, why not him over Carr?
It depends. Again, let's say if he takes us to the playoffs, even if he wins a game, is 10 games enough of a sample size for you to bank on him taking you to the Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl? To me, 10 games is not a big enough sample size. It's just not. So that's it for me personally. It's that stacked on some injuries. And it's not to say that Mike White can't be a decent quarterback in the NFL, but Carr has proven for 8-9 years now. Like even his really bad year right now, right? It's really bad year. He has 23 touchdowns and 14 picks or whatever it is, which is like, it's not great, but we'd sign up for that this year. 23 touchdowns. And when's the last time we've had like a multiple touchdown game from a quarterback? Well, I guess technically Zach Wilson a couple of weeks ago, but you know what I'm saying? So to me, it's really just not a large enough sample size. I don't know. If we had a full season of Mike White, he was putting up 250, 300 yards, multiple touchdowns a game, all that, had a few stinkers. Okay. Much more of a conversation, but Carr has proven it for 8-9 years while Mike White has proven it for maybe 10 games. So I'm not going to hitch my wagon to that for lack of a better term, especially a GM and front office that listen, like they're going to be here. Zach Wilson, they obviously fucked that up. Right. So they're getting their second chance at quarterback. And if you hitch your wagon to Mike White, he fails, and then Derek Carr goes elsewhere and is succeeding, they're going to be on very, very thin ice, if not falling through that ice and drowning. So you're hitching your future to Mike White.
Yeah. Okay, let me go to Beloved Peace for $10. Thank you so much. Carr would be a great addition. I thought he should have won MVP the year in 2016. I wouldn't mind drafting a mid-round quarterback and having them sit a few years. It is a shame. I was really high on Zach.
Go ahead, you go. I didn't. You didn't do the last one. So
okay. So I put out a tweet. I don't know if it might have been the day after the Jags game, so it might have been Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that me and Nani were talking a little bit after, and he was, saying that he pretty much agrees with me. There were some people that really didn't like Zach Wilson, or weren't super high on him, and it was Trevor's definitely better and stuff. And anyway, my tweet was basically like, even Zach's biggest detractors, the people that didn't love his college tape, I don't think they could have foreseen him being this bad, because he has consistently, his 2 years in the NFL, just missed easy throws. layup type throws that any quarterback in the league should make. And it's like, it's happened so consistently to the point that he is the most inaccurate quarterback in the entire league. And I don't even think those are close.
We're talking about Zach, right?
Talking about Zach, the most
Do you remember
inaccurate.
when we were at the Pats game, like pregame, like he threw that deep ball down the sideline, and we're like, he just missed like a ball on air, like pretty badly. I was like, this is not good, man.
Yeah, because we did get there pretty early.
Yeah.
Most inaccurate quarterback in the league. You watch the BYU film. Is he going against inferior competition? Sure, but his receivers and offensive line and things like that is also inferior. So take that into account. You could say the same thing for Josh Allen. Well, Josh Allen was going against inferior talent at Wyoming. Whatever. Anyway, Zach could hit any throw.
Yeah.
On that BYU tape, there were so many impressive throws, and just like even like like the magic stuff, like like we were talking about, like how he had a couple opportunities in that Jags game where he bootlegs or not bootlegs, he scrambles outside of the pocket and got Garrett Wilson downfield and just underthrows it, throws it late. It's just, I don't know what happened to that magic. I don't think anyone could have foreseen him being this bad. There was reasons to like him, and it didn't work. And plenty of people who know a whole lot about the game liked him as well. I don't know, man. It's hard. Evaluating quarterbacks is extremely hard. Carr, off the top of my head, what you're saying about 2016, Carr had a tremendous offensive line that year. That's when Kelechi Osemele was still good. Rodney Hudson, you had Donald Penn. They had some absolute maulers on that offensive line. This year, and I know Jacobs has had a monster year running the football, but I think the Raiders' offensive line has struggled a lot with protection. And as I said, probably 5 minutes earlier, it's not like I watched like a lot of Raiders tape because I do not. I'm just speculating here. I think that Carr is probably one of these guys that when he has a really solid offensive line and he's not dealing with pressure as much, he can cycle through his reads and literally make any throw. He's going to be good. So if you give him a good, solid offensive line, you can expect good things from him.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that year, 28 touchdowns, 6 picks. The next year, 22-13, 19-10, 21-8, 27-9. And then this year, obviously 24-14. And then Scott actually sent me something in terms of like the defensive rankings in terms of points allowed the last couple of years or since he's been, I don't know if this is
I saw that too.
Rookie year to now, but it's been 32, 22, 20, 20, 32, 24, 30, 26, 23. Imagine him with a top 5 defense and some offensive talent. Now, I know he has talent with the Raiders, but they're also struggling on the offensive line as well. But it's why quarterback is the hardest position to evaluate because it's all mental. And maybe the Jets should have looked into this a little bit more, and they didn't really get to do in-person interviews with him apparently. But you're going from BYU in a COVID year with no crowds to here, let's just drop you in New York with a rabid fan base, and then you miss a throw or two, you have a pick, and you can see he clearly gets affected by either good momentum or negative momentum. As soon as he misses a throw, almost throws a pick, it just downhill from there. So I think it's a mental thing with Zach. There was nothing at BYU that I saw that was alarming to me, minus the fact he didn't face a lot of pressure, but he'd hope he can overcome that because his mental processing was good. His accuracy was absolutely money. His anticipation was absolutely money, but it's the mental side of it. And the fact that obviously he doesn't respond to pressure, both from media and externally well. And clearly he doesn't respond to pressure well from the actual defensive line, linebackers, etc., which I don't think it was as big of a problem as some people said it was at BYU in terms of him taking pressure. Like I saw it sometimes and it wasn't necessarily A++, but it wasn't this. What he's been doing. So I think it's mainly the mental side of it. But what's the next one?
Okay, so Ron Weiss says I'd like to have Zach sit all of next season, not cut him or trade him.
Which, by the way, I appreciate all the super chats. Definitely dropping in the holiday season. So the thing is, it depends, and I suck with contracts. I see Rivka in here, one of our JetX writers. I am terrible with contracts in terms of what they can and cannot do. If you can get rid of Zach Wilson and clear his contract money out, like he's owed like $9 million this year and another $11 million next year, it's like $20 million in total. I think that's what it is. Again, I suck with that, admittedly. If it's for money purposes, I'm getting rid of him. If you can't really clear out the money, you have to eat a lot of that, then I understand keeping him because he's at his lowest right now. We're going to get what? Maybe a 4th round pick, 5th round pick from, or maybe if you kind of like rehabilitate him for a year, maybe you can get a couple of picks higher, a couple of rounds higher if he balls out in the preseason or relief duty. I get that, but if you can clear out some contract money, I'll get rid of him now.
Okay, so this is my thoughts that come to my mind. So I'm trying to think, where is the only example where a guy has been so bad early on in their career and eventually on the same team that initially drafted them,
Oh,
they
I was gonna say
eventually turn
Sam
things around.
Darnold lead the Panthers to the playoffs right now.
Well, I was going to say Alex Smith. So he kind of turned his career around once he got hooked up with Harbaugh, and then he went on to Kansas City and did some nice things there as well. But that's
Drew
really
Brees?
the only example. Yeah, but he
was injured. There was
okay.
injury problems.
He did his last year in San Diego was certainly a lot better, but he really didn't become Drew Brees until he linked up with Sean Payton in New Orleans. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like you see that potential with does Zach even want to be here? Right? Apparently his mom and people should not be DMing his mom crap like this, but his mom's putting it out. Well, I wouldn't say publicly, but I don't know, if you're DMing some random person, you have to think they're probably going to screenshot it. Does the family even want, they probably might want to change the scenery as well. I just don't know that it's going to work out here. And I don't think it's going to work out for the kid at all, honestly. I mean, he's got a lot of talent, but I mean, so did Jamarcus Russell. All right.
Yeah.
Marvin Guns, another very generous super chat, says, can you explain why it is so difficult for GM and front office to draft a good quarterback with the number 2 pick? What do you think went wrong? I'll let you.
We kind of already hit on it, right? It's what else do we really have to add to what we said before? So there's not too much I need to add to that. I appreciate the super chat, Marvin Guns, but it's really hard to predict what they're going to do when shit hits the fan, in the NFL, when all the chips are down. How they're going to respond to concepts, even though they ran a lot of West Coast type concepts at BYU. So I didn't really have a problem there with Zach Wilson, but it's why quarterbacks in the first round are probably under 50%, not even 40, 30, 20. It's not something, and people are saying Joe Douglas should be fired now because he tied himself to Zach Wilson, while completely ignoring he drafted 3 potential rookie of the years this year. I think Joe Douglas has plenty of breathing room, but I think he has one more shot on quarterback, Kyle, right? Let's say if he swings for a big fish and Derek Carr and doesn't work out with Derek Carr and he sucks for 2 years, we get out of that. Is he potentially fired there? Most likely. But it's tough. It's mental, man. Is there more to say than that? It's for Zach, it's clearly mental to me.
It's the whole mental aspect of things. So I know a lot of people, I listened to the audiobook probably I don't know, 7 years ago now or whatever, but I think his name's Bruce Feldman. He's a college football guy. He wrote a book called The QB, and he was talking about a bunch of different case studies. And I remember there was one part of the book where he was talking about how a good portion of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks have a certain type of brain type. And he mentioned Joe Montana and Tom Brady having the same type of brain type. And I don't know, I mean, your point about the whole mental aspect of things, take someone like Josh Allen, for example, right? He's also very talented and he has some ability that Zach doesn't have. I mean, he's just massive, but he struggled a lot his rookie year. Even his second year, he wasn't that good, but he just kept working at it and got better. I don't know. Sam Darnold, I mean, is he really playing that well right now? Because I did watch some of that Seahawks game where Carolina went to Seattle. He didn't really impress me too much in that game. How much of them, I know they had 200 something rushing yards in the first half. Yeah. So is Sam really playing that well? I don't know. He's certainly playing better, but we all knew and he's better than Zach Wilson was as a Jet. We know that, but I don't know. I mean, and we all said that Sam Darnold, when he's away from Adam Gase and the Jets, he's going to get better, but is he good? I don't know. Is he another one of these guys who when the chips fall down, I know that's one of the reasons why Daniel Jeremiah liked him was that Penn State, what was it? The Rose Bowl game or whatever, where, he threw that amazing touchdown pass and the comeback. He fit it right in the honey hole or whatever it was. I can't even remember, so long ago now. But I remember Daniel Jeremiah always just saying Sam just walked off the field and just had an ice cold stare, like nothing affected him. It's look at his Jets tape, and he seemed to be quite affected by a lot of.
I heard some of those games bruised and battered, just looked like he was absolutely lost. We actually have some Joe Douglas slander in the chat about. Listen, there's some things you can slander him about. Braxton Berrios was overpaid, in my opinion. JFM probably a little bit or overpaid. Laken Tomlinson overpaid. Whitehead overpaid. The decision to bring back Joyner as a starting safety was not good. Giving no tight ends to a rookie OC in his first year, that's a problem. But we have Breece Hall slander in the chat that he was he's a bad draft pick. A guy who was single-handedly carrying the offense on his back and led us to 5-2 is the reason Joe Douglas should get fired. That's crazy. But Kyle, let's get to we'll do the Lions game really, really quickly. Just because again, this is so far in the past that I just want to hit on it for maybe 10 minutes, max 15 minutes, and then we'll get into the Jaguars game. We'll get into future. We'll get into quarterback stuff. We'll get into the chat, all that. A lot to talk about. So I want to run through the Lions game quickly. We still have the freaking Seahawks game to talk about too. So there's gonna be too much shit we're going to talk about the next hour and 30 minutes or so. Lions game, Zach Wilson. Go ahead and talk about it. Then we'll go to offense, defense, and pretty much move on from the Lions game.
Okay. So it's been like 2 weeks or something since I watched that tape or whatever. But like I already said previously, that his interception that game was absolutely terrible. That as a quarterback that has started 20-something games in the NFL and you want to see progress and growth, that absolutely cannot happen. They threw some screen pass to Jeff Smith on third down. That maybe can go for a first down, but Zach needs to put some heat on the ball. He threw that with absolutely no heat. And and you talk about football as being a game of millimeters. When you throw we say that we were saying on our previous stream, I believe that he doesn't throw like a friendly ball because sometimes he's putting certain balls that have too much heat on them. And then sometimes when he needs to put the heat on the ball, he's not putting enough heat on the ball. That one stood out to me. Garrett Wilson had a big catch. I think this is probably late in the game. I should have timestamped it, and I keep telling myself I should have screen grabbed this one, but I believe it was Garrett Wilson's big catch late in the game. He also has Braxton Berrios on a dig if he doesn't run out of the pocket on that play. So it's like, yeah, it ends up being a nice play, but you didn't even have to run outside of the pocket to make that throw if you could just see the field properly. He missed Berrios on the first two plays of the final drive. He has him if he throws with anticipation, which he didn't. And again, you were just saying a couple minutes ago that you like Zach Wilson's anticipation in college. Well, he's not throwing with any anticipation now. Yeah. Anyway, so
I wrote down a couple things from that game. I went and rewatched it too. Wilson's first pass was behind Mims. That was almost a pick. You had a sack that was taken on third down where Conklin was opening the seam. You had an intentional grounding with Garrett Wilson wide open that he missed. He missed Conklin on third and long. I forget if he threw the ball behind him or over his head, whatever it was. The interception to Garrett Wilson where cover three, where he never checked the deep third, just assumed he carried Garrett Wilson, then threw it to Elijah Moore on a lollipop for a pick, which was terrible. He missed Berrios on that orbit like swing pass that could have went for yards. He had the Carter throw where he stepped up in the pocket and just fucking chucks the ball up. And thank God that Carter made a hell of a play on the ball. He missed Garrett on the dig over the middle. He missed Elijah Moore on third down over the middle for a first. He missed Berrios deep on the last drive. He missed Elijah Moore over the middle on the last drive. Now, there was some good. The Uzama throw on the hiccup concept. Okay, he got the ball there, even though it was underthrown. He had a big throw to Wilson on 3rd and 19 for a first, and then to Wilson a few plays later on a stop route to the left side, and you throw to Elijah Moore in the last play. That was obviously pretty good. But past that, you had a lot more bad than good in that game. Offensively, Kyle, I'll move past that. Running backs, Bam's spatial awareness and vision has been a little bit suffering the last couple of weeks, and I know he's been at least a little bit banged up, but he's taken. He's on the down part of the roller coaster of his career right now. He hasn't been as good as he was initially, but still really, really like him as a part of the running back rotation next year. Conklin had a nice catch. I don't know if you remember the catch where he was over the middle, and I think it was a drag or an over, where Zach Wilson puts the ball a little bit behind him, and he has to catch the ball with his hands. There's a linebacker like draped on his back, but he had a nice catch there. Wide receiver Moore had some good routes run. Garrett Wilson 4 for 98. He was missed some. The big catch on deep in the fourth quarter, where Wilson just chucked the ball up and he made a play on the ball, which was great. He had the drop over the middle. That was another problem we've been talking about in terms of him body catching. I don't know if you remember that play, but drop over the middle, and he's contested, and he tries to catch it in his body instead of catching it, extending with his hands where he dropped another ball. So that's something he has to work on. Let's see what else do I have from notes from and the other play too, where I don't know if you remember late in the game, but he was going to block a receiver or he was going to block a corner on the Michael Carter near touchdown run, and he didn't block him at all. And then he makes first contact with Michael Carter, and you see Garrett Wilson like freaking out on himself later in the game. So he missed the block. It could have been a touchdown, should have been a touchdown in the Lions game. Past that, you had another Barrios drop, and then you had Jeff Smith making some plays, some good route running, which he was. He had a good game. He should have had a touchdown, which I don't know how that's not called a pass interference by the ref right there when you clearly see his arms extended and pulling Jeff Smith back. And hey, it's fine. It's the Jets, so who cares? But moved through a lot there. Past that for the offense, Brown was bad. Fant was very bad. Tomlinson was bad. Like another guy just unblocked, and Connor McGovern was bad. Again, I moved through it really, really fast because, I know people don't care about the Lions game, but I want to at least get quick thoughts out there. So if you have anything to hit on from that.
Yeah, the offensive line has been bad for weeks now. And I think Nania put out an article that over the Jets losing streak, and I think this one actually came out after the Lions game, but we saw more of the same against the Jaguars, that the one big culprit that we've seen pop up week after week during this losing streak is the offensive line.
It's been terrible.
Yeah. And, we didn't expect Tomlinson to be this bad at the beginning of the season. Brown, I mean, could you really expect much more from a guy who's his age? McGovern, in terms of pass protection, lately it's been a little bit concerning. Although I'm still generally a fan of him, and I don't know that we should move on from him. Herbig, he's definitely one who's been getting worse and worse as the weeks go on. Mm-hmm. And Fant, it hasn't been good with Fant.
I don't think Zach Wilson literally running into a sack where where Fant's blocking guy this week and Zach Wilson runs directly into where he's blocking that guy. But what in terms of the offensive line, again, I'm sorry for moving really quickly. It's just I know I'm going to be so behind in the chat. In terms of the offensive line, like McGovern in a perfect world, is he your starting center? No, like you want a really good center. I think he's average. But in terms of next year, Kyle, like what do you do with the offensive line? Because Laken Tomlinson, in a perfect world, you move on from him. Are they able to with the cap ramifications? Again, I know you can spread out the dead money, but like how much money do we want to just push down the road in terms of paying dead money? I don't know how much they really want to do that, but you'd assume, I guess, he would be here in a perfect world again, and not. You have ABT. Let's pop him at right guard. What are you doing at potentially left tackle, left guard, center, right tackle going into 2023, especially when no matter who it's going to be, let's say it's White or Carr, like both guys are not necessarily the most mobile who need good offensive lines. What are you doing there?
It's so tough to say. And I saw that Rivka asked that same question in the super chat.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I don't know that not a super chat, regular chat. I don't know that everyone gets so lucky as like the Kansas City Chiefs. They absolutely nailed 2 picks and kind of got lucky with what's his name, Trey Smith, getting him where they got him. What was it, 6th round pick? Creed Humphrey, absolute stud. What was he, a 2nd round pick? But then they traded the first for Trent. Do you make a run at Tunsil? But the Texans even want to get rid of him if they're going to have a young quarterback. They're drafting a quarterback.
If you're going to get a quarterback in the offseason, regardless of who it is, plus having to sign Q, there's just and all the guys that they replace on defense, there's no way they can make a splash like that and get Tunsil. I don't think it's possible.
I hate to say it, but you can't really rely on Becton. But I don't think that Joe Douglas is going to want to just say, oh yeah, well, we're totally going to give up on Mekhi. I think Mekhi's going to, he's going to have a job. He's going to have a chance to compete for the job. But you also have to have a good contingency plan in place. So I think that they're going to have to invest more money in the offensive line. There's nothing you're doing with Tomlinson. He's coming back on that contract. I don't know. I don't see how you bring Fant back,
dude. I don't know if you saw him putting a highlight clip together on Twitter about some of his big blocks this year, asking people to run him for the Pro Bowl.
Tomlinson.
Thank God I didn't have anything in my system, like any alcohol in my system, because I went to quote tweet it with one of his bad plays. I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna completely avoid that. But dude, Tomlinson's been one of the worst signings we've seen in quite some time with the Jets. And we said when we signed, I don't think he's gonna be this bad, but we said he was overpaid from the jump. He's been not just average, but bad this season. So he is a complete miss or swing and miss with the Jets. And then you come out, you play like dog shit. You're watching the film with your offensive lineman in the room consistently, and then you're asking for Pro Bowl votes? Like really? Like in Tomlinson? So he is one of my least favorite Jets of a good amount of years. I do not like Lane Johnson at all. And one of the things you heard about him too, like, oh, he's such a tough guy and all that shit. With the 49ers, and I watched tape, I'm like, he's not a tough guy at all. Like, he gives up on a lot of plays. So he sucks. I hate Laken Tomlinson. So in a perfect world, I'll move on for him. But yeah, the offensive line.
And he is on the other side of 30, so don't expect him to get much better. I mean, like he could improve, like, you know, some techniques thing, and just wake the hell up, man. Like those couple plays where his battery and his controller just died. Like, I don't understand that at all. But yeah, don't expect him to improve that much. He certainly, it's hard to get worse. So, you know, pick up some of the technique. I don't know, maybe go on a diet a little bit on the off season or something like that, get in better shape or something like that. Maybe you can get a little bit better, but yeah.
Take like Adderall. It's not even that. It's like, dude, he just lets guys run and hit the quarterback. Like, he has like terrible understanding of pass protection and stuff. He's been brutal.
Yeah, like when passing off stunts, he overcommits way too much. And then like he'll let like a guy run in free.
I think it's probably Laken as left guard. I think it's probably McGovern at center. I think it's probably ABT at right guard. I can see them bringing. I think you have to bring in a new starting left tackle, and I think right tackle. And this is not ideal, trust me. I think it's probably Becton versus Mitchell, and then maybe bring in another depth piece who is a capable starter type guy. But like, you can't make over an entire offensive line in a season. I think it's a new left tackle, bringing back McGovern. That's obviously unfortunate. Maybe they draft a guy. And
considering he wants to play, do you want Dwayne Brown on the team?
Mm-hmm.
Do you? I'm asking you.
Me? No. Brown's been terrible. But moving on, defensive line from that game. Thomas and Shepard both showed up in the run game, which is a positive, and because they haven't really showed up early in the season, but in the run game they showed up in the Lions game. Lawson had 2 quarterback hits and stuff. Lawson is, again, he's not a bad player, but he's not playing to his contract. And I said it a couple of weeks ago, Kyle. I think it was with you. He's an $8, $9, $10 million guy getting paid $15 million this year. Like, he's average, but he's not.
Review too.
Yeah, but he's not great. So, and same thing with JFM too. JFM is another guy who's like making $15 million a year, $14 million a year. And he's playing like an $8, $9 million a year guy. So I want to see him step up. He didn't do too much in that game. The pass rush wasn't really there.
By the way, he could have had, in that, if you're talking about the Lions game, he could have had another roughing the passer call.
JFM?
He hit Goff late, and it wasn't, the flag was not thrown. It was reminiscent of some of those other hits he's had. Joe
Credit to JJ who got 2 stuffs beating Sewell twice. Huff forced the hold on Sewell. Rankins made a few nice sheds in the run game and a really good pass rush win. So Rankins is a guy who I definitely want to re-sign if I'm the Jets. And even like bringing back, you know, and people are gonna hate this, like, but bringing Shepard back another like $1 million contract, I think is a good thing. He's been playing well for 5-6 weeks now, Kyle, in relief duty. Now I'm disappointed in pass rush overall, but for his contract, Shepard, this is not something I thought I would say, but he's actually been playing pretty well. Linebacker Quincy's made some plays. He had the stuff on 4th down. Quan has dropped off. Parks was terrible that game. I don't know if you saw the one play. He's been man coverage. He's playing 15. He's playing 15 yards off of the ball and then backpedaling in man coverage. He had a Whitehead missed tackle again. You know, drink or repeat and drink, whatever that is. That terminology is. Sauce was locked down. Reed nearly got beat deep, but there was a push off by Quinnen Williams. The defense in general, I wrote down multiple long drives early in the game, 2-3 blown pass coverage on lines last drive, then last blown defensive play for 50-ish yard touchdown from a complete scrub of a tight end. So while the defense is good, I think in big situations you need to show up to be that great defense. And they didn't do that in that game. So anything you want to add? Again, I know I'm going really, really fast.
Speaking of Philly, Will, I believe it was against the Jags. I think they ran like mesh rail or something like that, and the running back. Will Parks is in man coverage on him, and it's his fault because he's the one coming down. The corner's not going to see him. He like ran into his own corner, and then he tripped, and then the running back was able to like easily get like 15 yards or something like that. That can't happen. No. So yeah, he's another big loudmouth out there. In terms of what you said about JFM, yeah, I don't know. Does he deserve to be making 15 something million? He doesn't give you enough off the edge, but he is a really good player. Like I feel personally that this is his best season with the Jets so far. And the late hits do piss me off.
Really?
At times.
I think I think 2020 might be his best year. Not last year, but 2 years ago might be his best year. He's playing inside more.
I think that we might say that because we weren't really expecting that from him in 2020, and that was such a bad team. But I feel like he just, and Grant, you and I don't chart, and we certainly really don't care too much for what PFF says, how many pressures he has. But whenever I watch the tape every week, I always see him have some like really dominant wins, particularly from when he's playing in the inside. But every now and then on the outside, he can cause some havoc too. Especially like, dude, no tight end. I don't care how good a tight end. No tight end can block him. He always just manhandles them.
They're gonna get rid of him. I think they're gonna get rid of Lawson. I don't think you can pay both him. I don't know what's the exact cap number in the NFL right now. I don't know exactly what it is, but you can't have JFM and Lawson eating up a large amount of your cap. Like JFM, I think he's a good player. I'd
get rid of Lawson way before I'd get rid of JFM.
I think he's a good player, but he's getting played like almost a great player, and I don't think he's been that. There's just too many times he's just kind of absent to me. But moving past that, the kicker obviously missed it. You know, that game is like so up and down. Like you feel like you're winning the game. It's a really ugly game. They get the touchdown. A couple of huge throws from Zach Wilson. Holy shit, we're gonna get in field goal range. 58-yarder miss. I was like, God damn it, dude. Braden Mann needs to go, Kyle. He's fucking terrible. He had a line drive punt for a touchdown, with absolutely no hang time. He punted for a touchback near the 50-yard line, which is a terrible punt. He had a 40-yarder from deep in Jets territory. He's been gross. Braxton Berrios had a muff punt in this game. And then coaching-wise, obviously Saleh going down with a timeout in his pocket's never good. Now I kind of understand him saying, well, we didn't think that Garrett Wilson had a catch or a first down there, so we kind of try to hurry up to the line. I get it, but still never a good look. And then that one play, I don't know if you remember, this was right before the touchdown throw to Uzama on like that slide route? But I think it was a third down play or second down play where they lined up in like that pistol formation or no, it wasn't a pistol formation. He was under center, but you had Zach Wilson under center with Conklin, Carter, and Garrett Wilson all lined up behind Zach Wilson with with no receiving threat at all. And he snuck the ball so what is the fucking point of having those three guys behind him? If he's going to sneak, put them out and at least threaten the pass. And then maybe you hold the linebacker's attention for a second. Like, what is the point of that formation? So Michael LaFleur sometimes, dude, he is like, I could see him getting fired, especially if a new quarterback comes in and they want a new OC, because some of this shit is baffling. Why? And
he's not getting fired.
You can have one guy. Sorry, Kyle. You can have one guy back there to do the whole, like, okay, he dives into the line. They push his ass to get him in. But you have three guys fucking sitting back there with no threat. What are we doing, dude? So Michael LaFleur has some massive brain farts. Now, again, I think sometimes it's too much because you have quarterbacks who can't necessarily consistently execute. But the empties, that play, the red zone calling, and not just that 3-4 down play sequence against the Vikings, but it was the plays that entire half thing onto the red zone was baffling. So Michael LaFleur has had his head up his ass the last couple of weeks, and it's really been frustrating. And that play was absolutely terrible from Michael LaFleur. But go ahead.
It does make me wonder, again, just speculating here, that he might have been trying to play with a look, and maybe, sometimes they call two plays in the huddle and you go with whatever one you like best. But some teams have been running, since the QB sneak's been so effective this year, some teams have been running like an option off of it. I know the Eagles had run that, and then the Cowboys, when they replayed them most recently, they ran the same thing on them, like in like a 4th and 1 situation, you can pick up like 10 something yards, and maybe LaFleur's thinking like, oh, well, if I have three guys in the backfield, I can maybe run an option off a fake sneak, and it can go in either direction. Yeah. I mean, again, like he didn't end up doing that, and I'm just speculating.
If he ended up doing that, that's different. But like, dude, like, and like, even it's just so bad. Like the Vikings game, it's 3rd and short, and you go empty. No threat of the running game. Like, why do we have to go balls deep either in the run or the pass game? Like, you can't have a threat of a pass or the run. Like, what are we doing here? So,
I don't know. I think he does like to pride himself on trickery. His I would say his repertoire of trick plays last year was pretty good. And you and I noted this when we were watching the film last year, but I even saw that Bobby Peters, who I've read a couple of his books, he writes some good what he does is like he'll take like a team and he'll write about their offensive game plan for like the whole season. And he usually does it with teams that have like good offenses. Like he did like the 2020 Packers, the 2019 Niners. And anyway, he had like a whole thread of like LaFleur trick plays. And he's like, thinking about, maybe doing the Jet, depending on how their season goes, maybe doing the Jets offense. And he had like a whole thread of like Michael LaFleur's trick plays and noting that as one of the strengths of the team. But it seems like this year he's kind of overthinking himself a little bit. And sometimes getting too fancy obviously works in the wrong direction.
Okay, Kyle, I'm going to fly through the chat to get caught up, and then we're going to go into the Jags game. We'll go into the Seahawks game. Might push past a little bit past 8, but Chris Sullivan talking about the running game has sucked because they're stacking the box 100%.
Can I get to another super chat? I didn't realize that Ron Rice had left us another one. Have any of you watched any tape on Cam Rising out of Utah?
I've paid 0 attention to college football this year, so I apologize. You're wasting $4.99, Ron, but I'm not a big college football guy in general. And usually it's only to pay attention to potential Jets draft picks, but I don't watch college football really minus like the big games and stuff, especially this year with the Jets being in the position they're in. We're looking at draft and mock drafts in end of September, early October. This year when the Jets are actually competing, I've been completely I've been deep into the Jets season, so I haven't paid attention at all. I don't know who that is. So
yeah, my bad, Ron, for missing that at first. I think I might have missed that because it was the same exact amount from you, and I figured it was just, why is Ron popping up in the feed again? But yeah, I couldn't really comment on that either. I know Joe has said that if he was doing this full time, he would obviously watch more college football, but that is neither the case for him nor myself.
So Chris, yes, it's been a part of it, but the running game has also not been good because of both the offensive line and the running backs have struggled a little bit. We talked about Derek Carr. He's probably my number one option. So let's see. I'm just gonna fly through this, Kyle. Happy tanking. We appreciate that. Big time. Let's see. Please stop the card. White is like Carr madness. White is better based on 7 games where Carr has been a pretty Carr. Listen, Carr's not a top 10 guy to me. He might not even be a top 12 guy to me, but he's like in that like 12 to 16, 17 type range. And that's the best we've had since 8-9 weeks of Brett Favre, Chad Pennington. Like he would be the best quarterback we've had in a decade plus. Like
how many QBs would you say are elite? Like when you use that word elite
this year,
how many would you put that label on? How many guys
this year? Like maybe 3, 4, 5.
Like it can't be much more than 5. If
even Herbert,
it's closer to 5.
Herbert is great. Herbert has not been elite this year. He's not been elite this year. He was better last year.
But dude, I mean, he's dealt with a lot. Like both of his receivers missed major time this year. His starting left tackle went down. He had the broken ribs. That dude's a stud, man.
No, I'm saying, but elite play is like for me, it's like yeah, and even like Allen to this certain extent he hasn't been elite in some games this year, that's for sure.
I think losing Dayball definitely has affected Allen a bit because he's had some just head scratching interceptions this year.
Yeah,
two of them against the Jets when we played them at MetLife.
But like in general, I think like your elite type guys. Yeah, we can argue over semantics. Like okay, Carr's or Allen has struggled at that point. Herbert is dealing with a lot, but it's like it's your Herbert, Burrows, Mahomes, Josh Allen types, and past that, like those are the elites. Rodgers wasn't there. I don't think he is anymore. Brady wasn't there. He's not anymore. Like that, those type of guys. But
come on, Joe. I think both those guys, if they're on a good roster, you'd still be saying they're elite right now.
Brady?
No.
Dude.
No. Look at the difference in his offensive line.
I've been watching. I get it. I get it. But when I watch Buck game this year, I do not see the same Tom Brady. He is not elite. I think he's still a good quarterback, but there's a difference between elite and good. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. I'm sorry. You can watch the film on any quarterback and point out a misread or misthrow. It's the final. Oh, you're saying here, Jets chaos.
He might have typed enter before he was done.
Yeah,
putting his final thought in there.
Oh. Yeah, again, I think people have watched Carr on like a couple of games this year, and think he's terrible. But for the most part, when I watch Derek Carr in the last 10 years or whatever he's been in the NFL, I've been impressed. So I think you put him with obviously you have 1 year where he's with Josh McDaniels, but then all the other prior years, he's a shitty defense, a shitty offensive line, shitty playmakers. Where like his playmakers are like Nelson Aguilar as one of his best receivers, and he's still putting up 25 touchdowns, like 11 picks. Like, I think he's a good player. He's having a down year, and not an ideal situation for him, obviously. So,
all right, if I can comment a little bit on this whole where does Carr rank thing. I remember back before Travis Wingfield kind of made it big with doing Locked On Dolphins and eventually getting hired by the Dolphins, he used to run a website called 3rd and 10, and basically he had his own system for grading quarterbacks. And, you know, I remember having conversations with him on my old podcast and stuff, and he was saying that, you know, there's X amount of elite guys in the league, in his opinion. And then there's like a lot of these guys who fall in like this like 12 to 17, 12 to 18 range. And they always vary between year to year, depending on how their rosters are and stuff. And Carr's kind of like one of those guys, man. Like on a year where the roster's shitty, you know, he might be closer to like, you know, the high teens or the 20s in terms of quarterback ranks. But if you put him on a good roster, good coaching and stuff, he's not going to be a top 10 guy, but he can kind of sniff that top 10 conversation.
He was like right there, like a couple of years with like him and like Kirk. Like listen, people are like, oh my God, Kirk Cousins is terrible. Like he was a couple of years, he was sniffing like that, like top 12-ish area, like right outside the top 10. Like there was like there was an argument a couple of years ago where like he might be just near that top 10, if not in like the number 10th quarterback in the league. And even if he's like, listen, this would not be great for like what they pay him or trade, whatever, but like, when's the last time we've had the 18th best quarterback in the league, Kyle? Like consistently, who's been healthy all year.
Even Ryan Fitzpatrick's good year, I would not say that he was above average.
If we had Ryan Fitzpatrick level play in 2015, what is the Jets record right now?
Shit, it would be really good.
They
would have won both the Patriots games for sure.
Okay. The Lions game?
They would have won the Lions game.
Okay.
I don't think they would have won the Vikings game because I think Mike White played pretty well in that game.
Minus the red zone. Okay, so we'll give him 3 more wins. We'd be 10-5 right now with Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know what he gave us into. So now you put Derek Carr and good Derek Carr. You're talking about a really good team. Like Carr is my guy. That's and I might go back and watch the film and say that and be like, oh fuck, he kind of sucked this year. But to my knowledge, what I know of him in his career, I would really like him on the team. I'm gonna keep moving on, Kyle. I'm sorry.
And if I could just reemphasize this, I think that the whole injury thing, and just think about Sam Darnold's 3 years with the Jets. He missed 3 games in each of his 3 seasons with the Jets. Zach Wilson missed 3 games his rookie year with the Jets, and he missed how many games this year? What was it? The first 3. There is something to be said for being able to suit up week in, week out. And like, dude, think about like somebody was saying in the chat that quarterback salaries have ballooned. They ballooned every year. That's the one salary thing that just keeps going up. Quarterback eats up such a huge portion of your salary cap. So if you get your starting guy and he's missing 3 games per year, that could be the difference between making or missing the playoffs. Like, because like what's the gap between your starter and your backup? For most teams, it's an astronomical gap. So there's a lot to be said for having your number 1 guy suit up every given week. And I think that too many people aren't really appreciating that about him enough.
Yeah. JD, yeah, the whole JD stuff, like he's on the hot seat, and then we have stuff like, oh, if any GM had that many picks, he'd be good. Yes, many GMs draft 3 rookie of the year type players in the same year. Like, every pick works out. Like, what are we talking about here? Have we not seen the Darren Lees, the Calvin Pryors of the world, like in the past? So I don't get what we're doing.
What do you think about this one?
What's
Nick's Integra. What scares me with Carr is his bad track record of playing in bad weather / cold games. Is that? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So Nania sent. We were talking about it in the Slack. If I can find it, he sent it. He sent it before because we were talking about it, and he does have like 10. It's like 10 touchdowns to 11 picks in the in cold weather games, and obviously a lot of that is the last week where he threw 3 picks versus the Steelers, but in those games, so he has Can I see? I don't know if it's 10 picks, 11 touchdowns or whatever it is, but he's played Denver in 2014, which was a very good Denver team in 2014. He played Kansas City, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Denver in 2019. The Jets, where he actually had 3 touchdowns in 1 pick. The Cleveland Browns of 2021, which is a good defense. The Cincinnati Bengals last year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. So it's not like he's playing a bunch of scrubs, but it's a lot of like 1 touchdown, 1 pick, like just under or just about like 200 yards ish a game throughout those games. So it's not been great, but again, that's a very small sample size over a 9-year career to say, oh, he sucks in cold weather games. And even if he struggles a little bit, it's not as bad as Zach Wilson's done in cold weather games. So,
I
if
just
that's his,
looked it up. I don't think he's missed one game in his whole career because the only 2016 season, he only started 15 games, but I think they had a bye. So I think they rested their starters in the final week of the season. So I think he's not missed one start ever.
somebody said he broke his leg. I don't know if that's true or not. Did he mention he
When?
broke his leg? I don't know. I don't remember it.
Did he break his leg in 2016 that season? I mean, I'm literally wait, hold on. Wait, 2015 or 2017 there was also 15 games started. Maybe it was that year. 2017 maybe. Okay.
Jets chaos. Garrett could have 1,300 to 4,000 yards on Zach Wilson. He's going to have what, 1,100 yards probably, if not plus 1,100 yards with Zach Wilson playing what, 10 games this year. So yeah, he could easily have 1,400 yards. I think he's the new like up and coming big time receiver in the NFL, and he produces a lot more with other guys. So I completely agree with you, Jets chaos there. Again, sorry, I'm moving through the chat pretty quickly here. I'm just trying to get caught up. Most realistic options next year are Carr or Jimmy G. A tier below that is Brady Rodgers. If Cowboys get bounced in the first round, Prescott plays awful, there's a small chance to make that trade. Yeah, I would say it's Carr or Jimmy G. Carr, Jimmy G, Mike White are probably your three most realistic starters for the Jets in 2022. But let's see. Moving on, Kyle. Jacoby Brissett? No. Again, if we're hitching our Super Bowl hopes to Jacoby Brissett, I can't do that. Mike White signed a backup and draft Hooker, and then what if Mike White gets hurt? I just the sample size of him playing good isn't even big enough, not even minus the injuries. Even if he played 10 games healthy and he was very good, it's just not a big enough sample size to me. And you factor in 2 injuries, it's just too much. There's some Joe Douglas slander in here, which we're not even going to. Matt Waldman laughed at the pick and exposed his flaws, and everyone ignored it. I don't know what he's talking about. What pick is he talking about, Kyle? You know what he's talking about?
He's probably talking about the Zach Wilson pick. I don't know if I honestly don't know what Matt Waldman's take on Zach Wilson is. I know Matt Waldman's done some good work on quarterbacks. He was very high on Patrick Mahomes when a lot of people weren't. But yeah, I don't know what his opinion was on Zach Wilson.
Yeah, the Joe Douglas stuff, Kyle. Like, has he not been impressive the last 2 years? And I get some of his free agency stuff hasn't been ideal. Like, but we all praise Bryce Huff, who we found late. We all praise Michael Carter II, who we found late. We love his draft this year. He drafted 3 potential rookie of the years. Elijah Moore still has talent, regardless of what his antics are. He's still a solid receiver. Like, he's done more good than bad. And I think a lot of people, like, when they look at the draft, like, even if it's a draft that's, let's say 50-50 in terms of hits and misses, people are like, oh, that's terrible. He missed on half of his picks. That's better than a lot of GMs do. Half your picks even working out to being solid players. Like, if you look at draft history, the hit rate is not even close to 50%, even in the first round. So to have hits like Huff, signing Zonovan Knight, be here, JFM off the scrap heap, Quincy Williams off the scrap heap. Like, he's been doing a good job, and I get he's had some bad picks, Becton and Zach Wilson, all that stuff. But I think it was Scott who put out something recently too, where like there was like 23 GMs who were asked about like ranking their quarterbacks, and like 22 or 23 out of 23 had Zach Wilson as a number 2 quarterback in the league or in the draft that year. So now it's a bad pick. It wasn't a bad pick at the time to me, but again, people.
Dude, just remember the chatter around the league. It was like there was so much about the 49ers wanting to trade up, and so much about the Eagles wanting to trade up. They wanted Wilson. It was like, dude, if you remember, and it wasn't that long ago, guys, so we should be able to remember this. It was like, okay, Lawrence is the golden child, but we knew that for years. Lawrence was going to go number 1 since his freshman year at Clemson when he was tearing the collegiate ranks up as a true freshman.
Yeah. Okay.
It was like Lawrence and then Zach Wilson, and then a bunch of other teams were like, what the hell's after that? Like, it was like, it wasn't just because, the Jets fell in love with him. If it wasn't going to be the Jets at 2, it was going to be somebody else at 2, and it was going to be Zach Wilson. That was the narrative then. A lot of teams loved him. And, I mean, look, the analytics loved Zach Wilson, right? Like PFF, if I'm not mistaken, PFF, for those of you guys that love the stats and analytics, I think they had him as like granted, okay, inferior competition or whatever, and they even admit that their grades don't account for level of competition, but they had him as like a 95.5 or whatever, which ranked number 1 that year. Was a higher ranking than Trevor Lawrence. Okay, obviously they didn't think he was a better prospect, but their grading system said he was better. All right, so the analytics loved him. Dude, his tape is ridiculous. I still go back and say, go and watch it, man. There's so many just huge throws there. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. Like it's a confusing thing.
Yeah, but, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. What do you think, Derek Carr? Well, the thing is, Jace, if you trade for him, you're getting his contract, right? So I think he's getting paid like about 30 and a half or like 33 to $35 million this upcoming year.
You could probably rework it to take the cap number down, and then you say, hey, listen, Derek, we're rolling you with you for the next couple of years. If they want, they could maybe, let's say that Joe Douglas wants stability at the quarterback position, right? And he wants his receivers to, listen, I know I can get a whole lot of Elijah Moore. I want to see Garrett Wilson take the next step and become a top 10 receiver in this league, right? And, these tight ends that we paid all this money for, we want to see them get the ball more and stuff. And Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh is like, hey, listen, we just want stability at the quarterback position. We know Carr can give them that. And they say, hey, listen, Derek, you're the guy that we're rolling with for the future. And they decide to spread out, his contract, maybe give him some more guaranteed money for the future or whatever.
I don't even think a little bit over $40 million is that bad with the cap rising. Like, I don't think they even have to do that.
I mean, some of these quarterbacks are making over 50 now.
Exactly.
Is Derek Carr worth, is 10 million less than some of the top ranked guys in the league? Is that
especially considering they signed their contracts a year or two ago, and you have the cap rising where they'd probably get signed for $55 million a year now. Like, if you're paying him $41 million in 2024, when it's not a large part of, like, it's obviously a large chunk of your salary cap. Like, he's worth what he's getting paid right now, like about $40-ish million a year, and that's what he's going to get paid with the Jets most likely. And what do you have to trade for him? I really don't know. When I initially think of it, it's like, okay, a second round pick. About that, I would think you have to trade for him. People are like, oh, well, he's going to get cut anyway. There's going to be a team, whether it be the Commanders, the Colts, where they're going to try to trade for him. Now, obviously, he has a no trade clause, so we can deny any one of those teams and hopefully make it maybe a little bit easy for the Jets. But I don't think the Commanders are a bad spot for him either.
How many players have no trade clauses in their contracts? Because I know it's isn't that like a more common thing in the NBA? But I thought it was like a very rare thing in the NFL. Like, I know Revis did. I know that Deshaun Watson did.
Didn't Tyreek Hill have that?
I think he did.
I think Tyreek Hill had it. Kyle,
I feel like it's not talked about enough at the time when a player's like signed, but I guess more of these players have it in there than we're used to, or is it becoming a more common thing? I don't know.
What's the big difference between Barkley and Breece Hall? Just off the top of your head, what's the biggest difference between those guys?
Second overall versus 36th overall?
It's a big difference. I think it's a big difference.
Big difference. So not only that too, but look, running backs, what's the average salary of the top ranked running back in the league per year?
Probably about like $13 million.
Something like that. Okay. Compare a running back salary to a quarterback salary. Thing also about Barkley, and did the Giants pick up his 5th-year option? Because I'm not sure they did. They're paying him huge money for that 5th-year option if they did, because it's based off of where you're drafted. So you're tying up all that money into a running back too. I mean, like, the obvious most reason why you don't draft a running back that high is, regardless of what kind of talent he is, running backs break down easily. You're talking 300-pound guys slamming on them every play, multiple ones. And Barkley has missed a significant amount of games in his young career. So it's like, yeah, running backs, some people do shit on running backs. Like, running backs aren't running backs can certainly be game changers. But the big reason, you don't draft them that high is longevity, right? I mean, like, I guess it worked out it did work out for the Chargers, taking LaDainian Tomlinson 5th overall. It definitely worked out for the Vikings, taking Adrian Peterson.
We're talking about a second. We're talking about a second-round pick who single-handedly brought the Jets at least a win, if not 2 wins, if you're going to count the Packers game in there as well. I know there's other things in there, but he was the offense that day for the most part. In the Broncos game, we don't win without a 60-yard touchdown, whatever that rush was.
But here's the other Dolphins game. The other thing we got to say about the Giants too, with the whole Saquon, like, if that wasn't enough, the Giants also needed a quarterback, and they could have taken Sam Darnold, who everybody loved, and apparently they liked him a lot too. They could have taken Josh Allen. They could have taken Lamar Jackson. They needed a quarterback. They didn't have one. Eli, was totally washed by that point. They passed on taking pretty much any quarterback. Probably, I don't think Baker Mayfield was their number one. So they could have taken whoever their top quarterback was on their depth chart, or on their big board, which I heard was Sam Darnold. And they refused to do that for a running back who has been hurt a lot.
There's a comment in here. Actually, I forget what I just said. I was gonna talk about it, but still talking about like Garrett Wilson being done with Wilson or with Zach Wilson. I love Garrett Wilson. I don't love his frustration, how he shows it on the field as consistently as he does. That's just a me thing. But moving on from
body language and stuff is important. Everyone gets frustrated, and like on the one hand, there's some aspect of it that you like, that he's such a competitor that he wants to win so much. But at the other, there's the other aspect that it's like, if you're showing that for literally millions of people to see, that's going to get people talking and say, oh, he hates Zach Wilson. He wants to kill Zach Wilson, yada, yada, yada. It's not a good look. So you got to control those emotions as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, you don't have Zach Wilson freaking out when he drops the ball. It's not. I don't love that look, but it is what it is. I like the fireness. I love Garrett Wilson. I just don't love that. Logan Tomlinson, big bust for signing Ryan Cleal. I'm not going to kill him for that. He hoaxed the guy out of retirement, and he played bad, but that's the only option they had. It was either Ryan Cleal or Jonathan Harrison that year. So I'm not going to kill him for that move. I think it's a hindsight thing. Tyler Conklin has been disappointing, but he's also not being used right. Like, he's never isolated on linebackers. He's running a lot of flats and checkdowns instead of being a primary read in terms of him running a route versus linebacker. So I think he's being misused. I don't think he's been uneven to horrific. Uzama overpaid, but I don't think he's been horrific. Corey Davis, I don't think he's been horrific either. Carl Lawson, was it a bad signing at the time?
I think Manny has said that Uzama has caught like 18 of his 20 targets or something like that, which is like 90% of targeted, like his targets.
And Corey Davis has had even if he's had 4 or 5 drops this year, even just in that line, which we have to get to the Jaguar game eventually. The Jaguars game, he was missed on 2 wide open digs. He was wide open and could have caught the ball and he was missed. So yeah, he's had a couple of drops, but how much better receivers are you getting for $10.5 million next year, Kyle? Like, how the receiver market's exploding. Again, Zay Jones, and I know he's had some good games, but consider what Zay Jones was prior to him signing with the Jaguars. He got paid like $12 million a year. Nelson Aguilar got paid more than Corey Davis. What is Nelson Aguilar doing right now?
Christian Kirk, he got $21 million a year?
I'm keeping Corey Davis for $10.5 million. That's my thoughts. Beachum, I'm talking about Kelvin Beachum. Absolutely no. If that means Becton, sure, but no, it's absolutely not with Beachum. Jack Conklin got signed. Rivka,
yeah, Jack Conklin did get a big extension
a couple of weeks ago, like maybe a week or two.
A couple days ago.
Was it a couple days ago? Yeah, he
might have been 1 week ago.
Oh, there you go, Matt. Let's keep going through the chat. Again, I'm trying to fly through it, so I'm missing a lot of comments. But that is why, if you want to get your chat 100% know it's going to be read, super chats are always appreciated, but it's because there's a ton of chats and Kyle and I both like to talk anyway. So are talking about the thing with moving on from Lawson is you have JFM, who typically plays left end. You have Huff, who typically plays left end. You have Jermaine Johnson, who typically plays left end. The other right end is like you see a big Vinny Curry or Michael Clemens. So I don't know who is necessarily going to replace Lawson, but there's no way you could play Lawson $15 million a year next year when you have to re-sign Quincy. You have to re-sign Quan potentially. You have to get a new safety at free safety. You might get a new strong safety. You have to get 2 new tackles potentially. Like, they cannot pay Carl Lawson $15 million for what he's been doing. He's an average player being played like a great player, and he's not that. So take Brady Mann to a farm upstate. Yeah, he's gone. He's been absolutely horrific. So Solomon Thomas re-signed for $1 million. I'm at the point now where I wouldn't be mad if he was re-signed, but I either way, I'm indifferent. He's been playing better as of recent weeks, but he was also
the Jaguars game was his best game.
Yeah, he's been completely absent for pretty much 12 weeks of the year or so.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be mad if they got rid of him, but I would be mad if they retained him. If you cut Corey Davis, Lawson, and Barrios next year, you save around 27. Barrios, cut him. Goodbye. He's done nothing this year. Nothing. So that's $5.5 million. Lawson's $15 million-ish, whatever it is. I'm not cutting Corey Davis though. Again, I think he's worth what it is. $10.5 million, even for a good number 3, is a good contract in today's NFL. Excuse me. So I'm keeping Corey Davis. If you look at, I think Nani did something about the stats in terms of when Corey Davis is in the game versus not in the game, and Corey
he
Davis,
has. I've seen that.
I really think he's better than people realize he is. And then again, who are you replacing him with? If you're cutting Berrios, you're cutting Davis. Your starting receivers are Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Jeff Smith next year. Like, what
Not
are we doing
Denzel
here?
Mims. That's
Not Mims. It's not going to be Corey Davis or Berrios. It's again Jeff Smith. I don't know. So
in terms of the whole Lawson talk too, like me and Scott were talking about this. Like, okay, well, you're going to give JJ more reps. It's like, yeah, but JJ, he still has a long way to go as a pass rusher, man. And let's pat ourselves on the back for that one. Listen, he's been good against the run, but the dude has a long way to go. And literally the exact problems that we brought up are what we're seeing on a weekly basis. There's just too many reps where he doesn't even get a ton of pass rush reps, but when he does get in, it's like he just really has a tough time deciding what he's going to do out there. I don't know. So, we'd like to say, oh, well, JJ takes the next step and, he becomes a better pass rusher, but it's still a little bit of a mystery because you were expecting more from the pass rush department from him this year.
Oh yeah. Well, we said like what we'd expect, like 4 or 5 sacks from this year. How many sacks did he have this year? I don't know, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, but as the optimist in you says though, okay, we're trading up. He's supposedly a top tier pass rusher.
Yeah.
Just like we didn't expect Garrett Wilson to be this good. So like, but we didn't expect it, but we're not like, I'm not totally floored. I don't think you are either because, you could see the raw talent. Same thing with JJ. Like, he's like a supreme athlete, which is part of the reason he got drafted where he is. So like, if he was playing a little bit better, from the pass rush perspective, we'd be a little bit surprised, but like, okay, well, they're maximizing his talent. I don't know.
Rivka says that she had Carr ranked as the 9th best quarterback in the league this year and now he's the 18th best this year. So like, if you're saying 9th best, he wasn't even as good as he's been in the past last year. He was better in 16, 17, those years. So you're talking about a top 10-ish quarterback who's been playing like a low teens quarterback. So you're letting this year of bad plays move you off of a top 10 quarterback last year. And you rather have, Jimmy G or one of these guys. Like maybe he's somewhere in the middle. Maybe he's 13, 14, 15, but I'm still paying and trading for the 13th, 14th, 15th best quarterback in the league this year. Even quarterback 18. How far have we been off from quarterback 18? So, and Carr, like the thing with Carr is he's always been that kind of quarterback to make like dime, terrible interception. Like he is that guy. Like, and that's why he is in that 12 to 17 range for me, 12 to 16 range for me, and not top 10. But he makes some amazing plays too. But yeah, he has a boneheaded interception every once in a while. But I still think you trade for Carr, he's going to be quarterback 14 next year for the Jets, and I'm taking that every single day of the week. I am. So. Yeah, that's kind of where I am. But if you had him top 10 and now you have him 18th, even if you have him 18th, like that's still decent. Now you'd hope he'd be a little bit more than that, but one bad year is going to let you move you off of him, Rivka. So in terms of the Russell Wilson stuff, like so any quarterback after 30 years old or whatever, we're never going to trade for. Why? So why Rodgers? Why do we want Garoppolo? Why do we want Tom Brady? Why do we want obviously Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are a little bit different. They're in a different tier, but Russell Wilson, dude. Can you imagine being a Broncos fan right now with that contract? But I think more of the outlier. Like it doesn't happen all the time. But
I didn't watch Russ a ton last year, but in previous years I watched more Seahawks, and I really can't understand why he's gotten so bad. Some of it, some people might say, well, Nathaniel Hackett's a bad coach. So I'm all for part of that argument, but
I've heard a little bit of the argument too that like he's I always forget the terminology here, but like I'm not even going to say it. He is trying to get out of the pocket and make plays that 27-year-old Russell Wilson used to make, that 34-year-old Russell Wilson can't. Like he used to be an off-script scrambling quarterback, and he can't do that anymore. So you're having to have him play in structure, and you just can't do that. And you have a quarterback who is trying to make plays out of the pocket, who can't play in structure with a coach who just got fired. So it's a mixture of shit. So Russell Wilson has to change what he is. Like if you're gonna, but Derek Carr doesn't rely on athleticism, So
which, by the way, those that want Lamar Jackson, that's kind of like my big reason why I'm like, no thanks, because you think Lamar Jackson when he's 33 years old is still going to be really good?
No. Yeah, it broke his leg in 2016 apparently at the end of the year.
Yeah, it was on like Christmas Eve or right around then. I read an article or I pulled up an article while we were talking about it.
Okay, I'm flying through. I'm like, Zach's tape is like throw porn. Zach's tape was like throw porn. It's not this year. He hasn't had many of those throws. He had that one really nice throw on a dig to was that Mims where Mims dropped it?
Not sure which one you're talking about.
I'm trying to sift through the chat. It
should stick out to me because he hasn't had a ton this year.
I brought it up where Mims dropped it over the middle where he extends his arms and doesn't catch it. It was against the Patriots, the second game where he dropped it. I believe so. Let's see. People talking about Brees. Yeah, Brees was just getting started too, which is unfortunate because he's like his last 3 or 4 games, like Dolphins game, Packers game, Broncos game, like going off, and injury. So if Corey Davis is your third next season, keep him. I agree. I don't think you're gonna do much better than who are you signing in free agency for $10.5 million is gonna be better than Corey Davis. I'm gonna argue nobody. But and that's not just I don't see guys better in free agency. But if you're drafting, if you're signing a guy who's like a high end mid tier number 2 to a really high end 3, you're talking about 12, 13, $14 million. So Beloved Peace says he wanted Carl Loftus over JJ, but hopefully JJ improves. Kyle and I are both on that train. JJ's been really good in the run game, lacking as a pass rusher, but I'm not disappointed with JJ so far. What has Carl Loftus done this season, Kyle? Do you know? I know your dad's a Chiefs fan, so
I don't know. I remember watching the Bills game and Carl Loftus had a tough time chasing down Josh Allen. Josh Allen made some really nice plays with his legs and outran Carl Loftus a couple times, but nothing else is really standing out to me.
28 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Obviously, that's not everything here, but Jet Up Buttercup says Carr's on tickets to the promised land. Okay. If he was on, and obviously you'd have to work out the contracts differently because he's not on a rookie contract, but you take what Carr is and you put him on the 2009, 2010 Jets. Are we in the promised land, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably. So
2010, dude, Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense was so good late in that season. I don't think we'd beat them.
Yeah. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think Adams tries to follow Carr? I think it's a possibility. Now, can that happen where it's a package deal where Carr says, no, I'm not going anywhere that Devontae Adams doesn't come with me too? Then I think we're kind of out of it because I don't think we can make that work unless you're getting rid of a bunch of guys. Corey Davis, Carl Lawson, JFM, all those guys. I can't see it happening for the Jets. I think that would have to be a Commanders or a Colts thing. But most likely not. Have you ever seen a deal like that ever? Like a package receiver quarterback deal when you're talking about a $40 million quarterback and what is Adams making, like $30 million ish, right? Something like that.
It's monstrous.
Yeah. So, please rank Tomlinson, Van Roten, and Winters 1 through 3 based on their last Jets season, respectively. Go ahead, Kyle. We have to get into the Jaguars game pretty quickly.
Tomlinson, Van Roten, and Winters. I would say Tomlinson number 1, Winters 2, and Van Roten 3. They're all bad, but Tomlinson's definitely, I would say, decently better than both of those in their last seasons. What do you think, Joe? Do you agree with that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was banning this. Nick is saying why would Carr he's saying why would Carr go to the Jets? I don't know. You're talking about DVOA, a top 3 defense, at least worse, a top 5 to top 10 defense. You're talking about a offense with an okay offensive line when they're healthy. Obviously, they've been banged up. You're talking about 2 decent tight ends. You're talking about Garrett Wilson, who's going Rookie of the Year. You're talking about Breece Hall, who would have run Rookie of the Year. You're talking about Elijah Moore and Corey Davis past that. Like, I don't know. Why not the Jets? They're just a really solid team minus the quarterback. That's probably why. Like, what are we doing here? So he's a troll. I think he's a Giants fan. But nonetheless, with that, I couldn't.
So I asked you for your opinion. Yeah. I ranked it number 1, Tomlinson, and then I put Winters 2 and Van Roten 3. And I said that Tomlinson, I think, is at least decently better than them. Like, I would say there's probably like a tier between them, but that still means like Tomlinson's bad though. But he's not nearly as bad as both those guys were in their last.
Are we factoring in contracts here? Because if we're factoring contract, Tomlinson's the worst.
I took it as not factoring in contracts, but yeah, if you factor in the contract, then yeah.
No
Although
contracts.
Van Roten was on his contract was always small, but Winters, he was getting he was averaging what, $8 million a year with that re-sign with the Jets.
I would say no contracts. It's Tomlinson, Winters, Van Roten. With contracts, it's probably Van Roten, Winters, Tomlinson because they're all overpaid. Van Roten was at least getting paid like chump change, like $2-3 million a year, whatever it was. So, okay, Kyle, we have to get into the Jaguars game now. We're all caught up in the chat, so we'll run through this kind of like we did with the other games, and then we'll get back into the chat in like 10-ish minutes or so. It'll never probably happen like that, but Zach Wilson, and I don't want to Zach Wilson seems so far gone as the Jets like starting quarterback option. He's not going to be activated this week. It's like almost kind of annoying talking about him. I'll move through it really, really quickly. But he missed Garrett Wilson by yards on a curl early in the game. I wrote these down in order. He had a chuck up to Corey Davis for a near interception, double coverage. He had Corey Davis open on the dig route, dirted the ball like 3 yards in front of him. He had he threw a ball behind Davis on another open dig route. He missed Garrett Wilson open pre-snap just based on the look that the Jaguars were throwing out there. He should have known that it was going to be a blitz and Garrett Wilson was going to be wide open up the seam. Took the sack instead of recognizing pre-snap. He should have got the ball quickly to Garrett Wilson, and then he was slightly late to see Garrett Wilson open deep and underthrows the ball. You have Streveler come in. I think he had like 92 yards, Zach Wilson, like almost like 3/4. Streveler comes in 10 for 15, 90 yards, 50 yards rushing, whatever it was. Clearly moved the offense better than Zach Wilson. He came and throw the ball.
He can't even throw the ball because that Uzama should have been a touchdown.
Did you see the Uzama? Like, were you standing there in the stadium like screaming Uzama too? Did you see that developing? Yes. Because like,
oh my god, yes.
I was behind the offense, so I saw Uzama. I like checked. I thought the ref might have been a defender, and I kept looking, and we were screaming Uzama, and then he underthrew him by like 20 yards. So that was really, really bad. He had a near interception on that last play on a force to Garrett Wilson. But with that being said, we're talking about a practice squad Canadian Football League quarterback who came in and moved the ball almost double what Zach Wilson did in nearly, half the time. So what does that say about Zach Wilson? Not much good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so evident. Like, you could think about the games where Zach Wilson has left the game, most notably that game in New England, could not get the ball. I mean, like Zach Wilson, basically his rookie year did absolutely nothing against the Patriots. And then Mike White comes in the very next drive and, throws a touchdown pass to Corey Davis, marches him all the way down the field. Mm-hmm. Granted, they didn't do a ton else in that game after that. It was that was the big 56-14 or whatever it was game. But the offense looks so much better whenever he's not in. Whether it's, listen, I hate to say it too, but overall, was Flacco running a better offense than Zach Wilson this year? If you take the Cleveland game, you'd probably say yes. He was shitty against Baltimore, and then
he was like he never had the high. Well, I guess
the Bengals game he was pretty bad too. He was really bad.
God,
he was really bad.
With the Bills, he was embarrassing.
Yeah, comes in for 3 plays.
3 plays. He had a strip sack and he get sacked, a strip sack, and almost an interception, and the missed throw to Conklin up the seam. He was brutal.
By the way, did you mention this when you were talking about Zach Wilson against the Jaguars? So there was the one play where Elijah Moore got called for offensive pass interference, where he really pushed the defender hard. It was kind of see from in the stadium, and then even when you're watching the all 22 angles, which I didn't watch the rebroadcast of it. I didn't really see like a severe push off on the all 22 film, but whatever it was called. Anyway, the defender's totally on the ground. If Zach Wilson sees Elijah Moore could go for a touchdown there if he makes the safety miss. And I think he's got enough space that he could make the safety miss. But again, it's just another example of Zach just not seeing somebody like that wide open. Mm-hmm. He's just not seeing the field that well.
Running back, tight end, receiver, Kyle. I want to hit on anything with those. Again, I know we're moving quickly through this, but
let's see. Running back, tight end, receiver. I know we want to move through quick, so I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, Bam Knight. I tried to see if I wrote down a scouting report. I couldn't find it, but you were just talking about earlier that Bam Knight's vision has kind of not been so good the past couple games. And when you asked me to watch a couple of his games pre-draft, or excuse me, after we signed him, I did, and I remember that being one of the things where I was saying I didn't like. And listen, if there's anybody out there that wants to go and look at a previous stream and search a transcript or whatever, I'm almost positive that I said I don't think Bam Knight's got the greatest vision in the world. But whatever. I really do like what he's done this year so far. He's certainly looked better than Michael Carter, but yeah, I've noticed that too in recent weeks that the vision's been lacking a bit.
Yeah, he took a loss of 3 or 4 yards where it could have easily been at least back to the line of scrimmage, if not more yards. Where
Ty Johnson had a nice run in this game. It was only like a couple plays, but I almost like if James Robinson is not going to be suiting up, and obviously Brees is not going to be there, and Michael Carter is going to continue to not impress. I hate to say this, and I didn't think I'd be saying this, but I'd almost like to see Ty Johnson get some more carries because, we both bragged about, how impressive his touchdown run against the Bears was.
Yeah.
But he's had a couple of other
run.
Yeah, he's had a couple of other nice plays, So
I don't know if this is a glowing review for him, Kyle, but I am not mad with Ty Johnson as our running back for next year.
Yeah, sure.
I'd rather have him than James Robinson at this point, which is crazy to say, but James Robinson has looked just cooked when he's been in the game, and he's going to demand a bigger contract. I don't know what Ty Johnson's contract is right now. Do you have any idea what is he signed next year? I don't even know.
I do not know.
Tight ends really not much that I noticed. I don't think they were bad or good this game. The receivers were. Obviously you had Garrett Wilson dropped. Did he drop a ball? He had that one fumble.
He could. What was that? What's that guy's name? Tyson Campbell, who he's that cornerback number 32. He's taken one pick before Elijah Moore.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple. It's not just the one. There was at least 2 instances where Garrett Wilson had a shot to go and win a jump ball versus him, and the guy Campbell beat him. Right. So you expect Garrett Wilson. We're talking about crazy, way he can contort his body in air. That we want to see him win some of those plays.
Yeah, like the chuck up ready to work back.
There was the one chuck up, and then there was another one really late in the game that happened after that one.
Oh, so this is his. They would actually have to re-sign Ty Johnson after this year if they want him back. But nonetheless, it's running back 4. Past that, Corey Davis had a drop, which people are frustrated with. But again, Zach Wilson missed them wide open on 2 digs. So he's a good receiver over the middle. Yes, does he have a little bit of a drop problem? But you're talking about 4 or 5 drops this year. I think it's an issue, while also acknowledging he's still a solid receiver. If whether you want to label him a decent number 2 or a very high end number 3, who, and people don't want to hear this necessarily, but he makes a massive impact as a blocker on an outside zone scheme. So good blocker. I think he's again worth $10.5 million. Past that, the offensive line was bad again in this game, and part of that is them stacking the box. Brown had at least 2 or 3 bad plays. Fant had I just wrote down bad, like the number of bad plays they had. Fant had 1 or 2. Connor McGovern had a really bad play. Herbig had a bad play, who overall, like you said, has dropped off as of late. So people are talking about bringing him back as a starting guard next year and maybe moving ABT to right tackle because of Herbig. No, we don't want to rely on Herbig as a starter next year. He's a backup level player to me. And that's kind of what we saw in his review when I did his review. And he played above that expectation early in the year. Since the last 2 or 3 games, he's definitely regressed to the mean and played more like a backup. And again, a part of that is them stacking the box, but he's not somebody you want to necessarily rely on. So
yeah,
him, and obviously the offense overall, Kyle. Again, you start off at the 18-yard line in Jaguars territory, wherever it is, and you move backwards like -2 yards, and you get a field goal. I was like, yep, not gonna happen. So they're just brutal.
Not looking good.
Unless you have anything to add, Kyle, the defense, like I said, so you had the defense who came out the first drive, obviously strip sack gets the ball in Jaguars territory. Second drive for the Jaguars, they had a 22-yard gain on a blown defense, 19-yard run. They allowed a field goal, 3-3. The next drive, they allowed a touchdown with a blown defense, and multiple Trevor Lawrence scrambles, 10-3. The next drive, they drove it down for a field goal, 13-3 before we can blink. Next drive, the Jets blew another coverage, allowed the Jaguars to drive down the field. They missed a 44-yard field goal. It should have been 16-3. They missed a field goal. We got lucky. The next drive after halftime was a drive all the way down the field for another field goal. So you're talking about 5 out of 6 drives in the first half in 5 out of the first 6 drives that should have been scores. But they missed a field goal, so let's celebrate. The defense was bad this game, and to end the Lions game with a 51-yard touchdown to a nobody, the defense has to again take their head out of their ass the upcoming weeks to make that playoff run. Now, is part of it potentially the fact that they're playing with Zach Wilson and they're not motivated as much. I get that argument, but at the same time, they're getting paid millions of dollars and they got to play just as hard as well. But they sucked in this game. It was bad, and that's a little bit of my concern with the Seahawks is like Trevor Lawrence and some of these quarterbacks, Jared Goff, like dinking and dunking up the field. Geno Smith has like a 70+ completion percentage, and all he does is well, not all he does, but a lot of what he does is dink and dunk and take advantage of guys in the flat and yak opportunities. So,
is Kenneth Walker going to play?
I don't know. I know he's questionable or didn't practice or whatever it is. We'll look at that in a little bit.
Yeah, that would be a big loss if he's not going to play.
So yeah, the defense was not good this game. I don't care that they only 19 points. They didn't. It really should have been 22, and it's not like the Jaguars had to keep their foot down to the pedal. It's only like 2 or 3 drives they stopped at the end of the game. Each one of their drives felt like 25 minutes long. It just methodically driving down the Jets' throat. So it was a little bit disheartening, and that's the Jets' defense is. The bend but don't break is like I don't trust their linebackers to switch on guys to make tackles in open space, and they just got again destroyed in this game in terms of underneath and just letting Trevor Lawrence scramble. So it was definitely a disheartening performance from them as well. On top of the offense being obviously complete dog shit. So
yeah, I think they generally like no, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. We can move on because I know that we're trying to speed through some things.
No, it's okay. Defensive line, Kyle. The one thing I want to mention before like going into the entire defense, why is Bryce Huff only getting six snaps in this game? Like, is he going to resign here? Like, if you're Bryce Huff right now, are you resigning with the Jets? Like, what in a realistic scenario where they're not playing you on rundowns, they're not going to want to play you like you play on rundowns. You're only getting 6 snaps in the game. There's definitely more pass rush opportunities than that. Like, are you going to resign here? Do you see him as a Jet in 2023?
If I'm Bryce Huff, I'm saying thank you to the Jets because you guys took a chance on me, right? I went undrafted. You guys, you gave me a shot, but I'm going to go elsewhere because I think I can do more than just rush the quarterback. Now, the Jets coaching staff and the Jets front office, and well, we don't really see it that way. So it's kind of one of those things where, you're grateful for what a player did for you and the player is grateful for what you did, but it's like, it just makes more sense logically to go somewhere else for the reasons that you said. Now,
I had to bet he's on the team next year.
Yeah. Now, and listen, all it takes is one team to say, "Hey, listen, we think this guy can be more." I really do question how good Bryce Huff will be in a bigger role. Does anyone know what his arm length is? Because I feel like he's one of these guys that, like, all right, like if he's going to be an edge player. You need to set the edge, and sometimes you just want to use like a long arm to kind of hold your line on the line of scrimmage. But he never really wins with length. Whenever he's winning, it's like with like a double swipe or a spin move, or he's just winning with like a really good bend, right? He's never really winning with like using like his length. So as a guy who needs to hold up the line of the scrimmage on like a backside of a run or something like that, I don't really see him being good there. And I understand why the Jets play him in such a limited role, but like I said, it's only going to take one other team to want to give him an expanded role elsewhere.
I don't see him being re-signed, and I don't think when I watched him in his like first couple of years, or what was his first year, I don't think he was such a liability where like we can't afford him ever to play in the run game to never put him in. Like it's not like Jacob Martin level run game stuff. Like I think he was at least capable in the run game. I think he's a strength in the run game. So if I'm Bryce Huff, I don't re-sign with the Jets. There's no way unless you're going to pay me what I would be paid like to play 60-70% of snaps elsewhere, what the Jets are never going to do because they want to play him 6 to 15 reps a game. I just can't see him being back, which is obviously unfortunate because he's a really good player. Now, I think they could put a tender on him, right? Which I think somebody mentioned in the chat. I think you could, maybe. I'm not great with that stuff, but Q started the game with a strip sack. He had a third down, really nice read to stuff a screen, which was awesome. JJ made some more plays in the run game.
By the way, Q, he is so good at like bringing whenever he gets his hands on someone, whether it's running back or a quarterback. Because like you see many times, like for example, we were talking about Trayvon Walker, the Jags' first overall pick. He would get pressures a lot, but he had a tough time bringing quarterbacks down. Q, he gets anywhere near the quarterback, he brings him down, and so it's just one area. Like there's a lot to be said for that too. And dude, that screen that you were just talking about, like that was really big. So and it's just funny that some people are saying, oh, well, what was it? PFF Mike or whatever was saying, oh, well, Chris Jones has finally taken Aaron Donald as best interior defensive lineman. It's like, Quinnen Williams is not even in the conversation.
Who said it was who from PFF?
Mike Renner. He said that Chris Jones has overtaken Aaron Donald as the league's best interior defensive lineman. And it's like full stop. It's like, first of all,
Not gonna mention the guy
I
with
don't even know if
12
that's true. I
sacks.
know Aaron Donald has been like a little banged up this year, which he's been pretty healthy his whole damn career. So it's like, is he actually better, or is it just because Aaron Donald's banged up? And it's like, it's just Chris Jones. Like, Quinnen Williams is not even in the conversation. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So, Q's been obviously absolutely money. Again, past that, JJ had a few stuffs. Rankins to me still worth bringing back. I saw him make a few plays. Shepard played well again this game. Kyle had 2 really nice stuffs. Thomas had, I think, 2 or 3 quarterback hits, at least 2 of them being right in a row late in the first half. So again, he's been impressing as of recent. And you said that this was his most impressive game, which I agree with.
He had a big run stop too. Big run stop too. I think it was like a 3rd down or something like that too on what's his name? ETN.
Linebacker Quincy in the run game, he was good. Spotty and pass row at best to me. You had Whitehead another missed tackle on a terrible angle. I don't know if you remember the big Evan Ingram screen pass where he took a brutal angle and just let him run over the top. Which somebody like, oh, you don't know football on Twitter. He was filling the alley. If you didn't know what that means, like, yeah, fill the alley when you're outside force player is blocked. Just because that's what your assignment is technically, just do that and just don't worry about what's actually unfolded after the play took place. Like, what are we talking about here?
Could you pull up the play if it's not too much trouble and if you actually want to go into that? Because I'm having a tough time picturing the play you're talking about, and I really want to see it. Being that you're telling me this story.
Okay, hold on. Video file. It's miscellaneous because I didn't do a film review for this one. Where is it?
I'm anxiously waiting for your Lions one as well.
Whitehead angle. This is the play I'm talking about. Here.
Okay.
He's supposed to fill there, Kyle. Don't you know that? We don't know football. He's supposed to just fill.
Wow. Oh, wow, that's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. But Kyle, you played in college, so you know a lot more. Go ahead. Yeah, that's what he's supposed to do. Because I know he's supposed to force, but guess what? He's getting blocked to the inside. So you don't just fill the fucking alley. Like, what are we doing? So I didn't even comment back because then it's going to turn into 30 tweets. Like, and I argued with some guy about Whitehead, and he's like, dude, he misses tackles, and so does Mosley. Like, he's not a bad player. It's like he's a really good in the box defender. He's really good at Tampa Bay. And I commented back with like multiple plays of him missing tackles. Like, we really think Whitehead's a good player, Jets fans? Like, this is what we're defending on Twitter. So I answered back to a couple people, and I always regret it because there's never a productive conversation that's going to happen on Twitter, and you're just going to argue over, oh, he's good, no, he's bad, oh, no, he's good. Like, it goes nowhere. I put out evidence for reasons, but yeah, no, he's not good. So let's dump the Whitehead as good stuff. He's been trash. Minus he makes one big hit and then one missed tackle. Like, he's so high variance. It's not a good thing. So that's apparently a good play though, Kyle. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is why I don't go on Twitter as much as I used to and argue with people. It's just not worth it. Past that, let's see what else I have for the corners. Reed was pretty good this game. Sauce was quiet, which is great. Brady Mann had a 27-yard punt, Kyle. I don't know if you saw that, but just he's so bad. It's out of control. Coaching for this game, the things I noted down for Mike LaFleur was, again, what I mentioned before, the first 3rd down in the red zone with 4 vertical routes with nothing open for Zach Wilson. Not great. That was obviously disheartening for him. And then he had the one play where there was near max protection for the Jets with nothing open and no protection. So that was not ideal for Zach Wilson. Really no chance there. And then again, for this game, like many other games, way too many vertical concepts with a quarterback who's struggling versus pressure. I just don't get it. Michael LaFleur has not been good in recent weeks, not seeing a lot of things open. Now I get if Zach Wilson was better, his offense would produce at least to maybe a near average level, but I haven't been impressed with a lot of decision making in bigger situations, red zone, 3rd down which is where you make your hay. I've not been impressed with him. Like, yeah, he can move the ball from 20 to 20 decently, but in terms of the red zone stuff and 3rd down stuff, he's just not been impressive to me at all. So and people are asking the question, like, do you think they really move on for him? I think that he stays if Mike White stays, but if you have a Derek Carr, let's say it's Derek Carr coming in and Derek Carr says, no, I want this OC. Can I see them firing Mike LaFleur for said OC? I can.
They're not doing that for Derek Carr.
I could see it.
Salah's been tied to the LaFleurs since forever. And I understand that sometimes, the job goes first rather than like family and personal crap. I get that, but
So if you're trading, if you're Joe Douglas and Derek Carr says yes, I'll come to the Jets. I just want Kyle Smith as my OC. You're gonna say no. We're gonna roll with Mike White, not Derek Carr, because of Michael LaFleur.
Okay, listen. There's a lot to like about Derek Carr, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about that tonight. But it's not like we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. If it was Patrick Mahomes coming to your team, no, they're not going to do that for Derek Carr. They're not for him. For Patrick Mahomes, okay, maybe,
definitely.
You
fire the head coach. You say you want Salah? Okay. Joe Douglas. Oh, sorry, Salah. See you later. Who do you want? What's their OC's name? Oh, you want Bieniemy? All right, adios, Salah. For Patrick Mahomes, but I put other topics in here like Zach Wilson stuff, guys to cut next year. That's all stuff we can talk about at a later time. Is there anything else you want to add from the Jaguars game? I know we flew through that game, but people don't give a shit. It was a week ago, so
yeah. No, I don't have it to add anything. I don't think. Let me see. Yeah, you can move on. If I want to bring up something, I will.
Okay, share screen. Let's look at the Jaguars.
I mean, listen, there was a 3rd and 10 screen where Elijah Moore didn't even try to block for Michael Carter. Every week I'm finding just examples and examples of low effort from that guy. Mm-hmm. And I still really like what he brings as a receiver when he actually plays, but I could see why the coaching, why the staff chooses to not play him on a huge percentage of the snaps.
Mm-hmm. It's like someone mentioned on Twitter, there are 3 pumps of Brandon Mann punts, the 40-yard line drive, punts out on touchbacks in the chat. Yeah, that's all it is. Like, he had a 27-yard punt in this game. So let's bring up the Jaguars depth chart. And by the way, go check out a Nani article that's out there. He wrote the weaknesses of the Jaguars defense, of Jaguars. Yeah, Jaguars. No, sorry. I pulled the Jaguars.
You mean to put up the Seahawks?
Yeah. That's not ideal.
Where the hell did you go now? I have no idea where I think he accidentally kicked himself out of the studio. So there he is. Hold on.
Hello. I meant to exit out of the depth chart. I kicked myself out of the street. They pulled the Seahawks depth chart and injury, and I pulled the injury report as well. But so check out Nania's article. I'll promote that while I'm typing, which is always hard to kind of multitask. But he wrote 3 weaknesses of the Jaguars, or the Seahawks team and defense. I think it was just the defense, but apparently wide receiver running the ball or orbit motions, orbit screens, jet motions, and jet sweeps are weakness of the Jaguars team. Their linebackers versus tight ends are a very big weakness. And
you keep saying the Jaguars, you mean the Seahawks?
Yeah, the Seahawks. The Seahawks right cornerback.
Wait, Joe, check your microphone. Your microphone might have went to your default. It might be on your AirPods right now.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm all over the place right now. Mike. No, it should be
okay.
Good.
Then it was a little spotty for a moment.
So Jaguars, Seahawks defense. Their right cornerback is their weakness apparently in the passing game, which I believe is Michael Jackson, right? Their linebackers against tight ends. So maybe Michael LaFleur actually isolates Tyler Conklin versus their tight ends, which he did Conklin did consistently when he was with the Vikings, and now we just don't do it with the Jets, which is again just baffling. And then let's get some type of receiver on a jet sweep or orbit screens or whatever it has to be, because apparently they struggle mightily versus that as well. And then I know they're not even good against the ground game either. So hopefully Mike White can open up their defense a little bit. We can attack them in those ways. And then the running game can even take advantage of a defense that is near bottom of the league. Like, people are afraid of the Seahawks, like not afraid of the Seahawks, but talking about how they've had a good year, Kyle, but the Seahawks haven't had a good game or really beat a good team in how many weeks? Like, their last couple of weeks, let's look. My internet is really fucking with me right now. It's driving me crazy. So let me pull up their schedule. As of recent, right? If you look at what they've done, and even this season, like, one of their wins is the Broncos by 1 point, which, okay, they lost to the Falcons 27-23. They beat the early Lions. They lost to the Saints. They beat a shit Cardinals team. They beat the Chargers. Good win. They beat the Giants. Okay, fine win. They beat the Cardinals. Okay. But since week 10, they lost to the Bucks 21-16. They lost to the Raiders 40 to 34. They beat a terrible Rams team 27-23. Congratulations. They lost to the Panthers 30-24. They lost to the Niners 21-13. They lost to Kansas City 24-10. So they haven't been very impressive as of late, and even early on, they weren't beating many good teams. So I'm not like overly concerned with what they are as a team. I think the Jets are legitimately a better team. I think that's why they're actually favored in this game. But overall, just give me some thoughts on the Seahawks as I pull up their depth chart.
Yeah, I hate to say it, and I know that he's kind of had a resurgence, and I know that our mutual friend and buddy Scott Mason, he texted me his tweet that he said that the only Jets GM to draft a Pro Bowl quarterback was John Idzik. I know Gino's had a resurgence, but I kept telling myself pretty much all year that, and there were even some Jets fans saying for quite a while, oh, maybe the Jets can go and get Geno Smith in free agency. Honestly, I wouldn't even really be happy with that. Like, let's say they could straight up sign him. Let's say the Seahawks did not franchise tag him and the Jets could sign him straight up. You're telling me that you'd be happy and excited with that? Geno Smith to lead your franchise for the future? I mean, listen, credit to him. He's gotten a lot better, but I still think he's Geno to an extent. So, Kenneth Walker, he's not somebody that I evaluated from the draft, but supposedly he's had quite the rookie year.
He had a limited practice this week, so I'm not sure if he plays or not. But
now their offensive line, supposedly it's been decently upgraded. I know they spent like a couple premium picks. What's the name of that? Obviously everyone knows Charles Cross, but who's the other tackle that they drafted, but they got later on?
Right? You can see my screen, right?
Now I can. Yeah, you didn't have this.
Okay,
you didn't have this.
It's Abraham Lucas.
Okay.
Right here, who I'm pretty sure did not practice today. Yeah, he didn't. I guess he didn't show up at practice. So you have Abraham Lucas, who is most likely not. I feel like limited on Thursday usually means you're going to play. Does not practice on Thursday usually means you do not play. That's not. Don't take that verbatim. That's usually what it is. So Lucas is probably not going to play, and their backup right tackle is going to be Stone Forsythe.
Stone Forsythe, what a name!
I think it's a later line draft pick of recent years as well. Actually,
I didn't know there was a center named Kyle Fuller. Okay, so DK Metcalf and Tyler Decaf. I totally did not mean to say that. So DK, he's a stud. No doubt about that. We talked a lot about him this offseason, potentially getting him. Tyler Lockett, he's another one.
Make him a decaf type receiver, you know?
Somebody shared one of those like EPA efficiency charts, and it was like I'm trying to think what were the exact things that they were quantifying on those. And again, it's like stats, so like I don't know, take it with a grain of salt or whatever. But Tyler Lockett was like, he was right up there with like Tyreek Hill and like some of the best receivers in terms of like gaining separation on certain plays. So I always really like Tyler Lockett coming out of Kansas State. So defending
and in terms of the receivers too, sorry to interrupt you. And somebody asked before in the chat, like, would you have, is Sauce ever going to travel? This is the game where like Sauce versus Metcalf and Lockett versus Reed is like two ideal matchups for each guy. Kind of not ideal. They're both good players, but like Metcalf versus Reed is not ideal. And Lockett versus Sauce, like if he's going to struggle with one type of receiver, it's a Lockett type guy. Now I know Lockett hurt his hand, right? And I heard he could not practice all week and still play, or his finger, maybe. But he got a limited practice today, so maybe he plays in a reserve type role. But getting a limited on Thursday, I would guess he plays, which is not ideal. You'd obviously like to see them not have Lockett. They have Marquise Goodwin listed as not injured here, but on the injury report, he didn't even practice today. So you're going to assume he's not going to play either. Yeah, did not practice on Thursday. So you have Metcalf, an injured Tyler Lockett, and then Laquan Treadwell. So they have some good top guys, but past that, their depth isn't really ideal.
Yeah, what a bust he was. In terms, I don't watch the Seahawks, so like I don't really like. I feel like the Jaguars, in retrospect, and how much of it was a Thursday night, how much of it was, Zach Wilson, but like in terms of like a game plan, like Doug Peterson had a really good game plan for exposing what the Jets are bad against, like passing off and like, crossing routes where, players have to switch responsibility based on the release of the receiver and things like that. In terms of like, going deep and vertical with guys, which we know that DK can go deep. I almost called decaf again. And Tyler Lockett. These are both guys who, who can beat you all over the place. I feel like the Jets corners match up well enough against them. And this isn't really a team that's going to beat you with like a lot of trickery and scheme. I don't think so. I feel like this is a much better matchup than the Jaguars were for the Jets.
The thing I'm worried about with their offense is just the fact that Geno has a high efficiency rating, just like not high efficiency, high completion percentage, and a lot of it is underneath if you look at the numbers. So I'm more worried about the Noah Fants, the Kenneth Walkers underneath, even though Kenneth Walker's banged up. But I'm worried about getting those guys in space versus our linebackers and our safeties more than I'm worried about. And listen, obviously Metcalf and Lockett are good players. But if we're really going to get burned somewhere, I think it's underneath the versus the linebackers, which the Jaguars did. The Lions did, the Patriots the first time did that versus us, and you have a team who is that type of team, a dink and dunk type team. That's my concern. It's not necessarily the receivers. Again, banged up Lockett, Goodwin's not going to play. So looking at Metcalf, banged up Lockett, Treadwell. Tell
me about the left guard and the center, because I don't know anything about Damian Lewis and Austin Blythe. I don't think he's
not that Nanya doesn't shine it everywhere, but like having him on the show for this stuff is great because he goes and like researches all their numbers and stuff. Yeah. But I don't want to say they're terrible, but do I know who Damian Lewis is, which is not necessarily a great sign? No. Do I know who Austin Blythe is? Not necessarily. I think he's a younger guy. I'm not sure. Gabe Jackson. Okay.
He's a nasty guy, but he's on the back end of his career. So
yeah, an older tackle who moved to guard. You have an injured.
No, he was always a guard.
He wasn't a tackle back then?
He's a long-time guard for the Raiders.
Okay. My mistake. But you have a offensive line with, again, an interior that I'm not going to say is great. Maybe they're average at best. You have Stone Forsythe versus, Bryce Huff and JFM. Hopefully they can take advantage of that. And then you have Charles Cross, who I know has been playing pretty well for them. But it's something to write home about the offensive line. And Kenneth Walker, I think Rivka said it in the chat, or maybe she wrote an article on it. He's a very boomer bust type player where he's gonna get -2 yards or like +10. So hopefully the Jets can again, stack the box a little bit, contain their running game and take away the short stuff. So that's my primary concern is just dink and dunk. 5 yards, 6 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, yak. Like that's how their defense gets beat. And this is the exact type of team to do that. So I'm a little bit concerned versus the offense, but then versus their defense, obviously, if we want to transition to that, Kyle, like their defense doesn't have too much that we're going to write home about. They're one of the worst defenses in the league, especially as of recent weeks. Like Shelby Harris, okay, decent player. Pona Ford, Quentin Jefferson, Bruce Irvin, Jordan Brooks. Okay, he's a decent player. Cody Barton. I know Nwosu is a decent edge rusher, so I think they have a decent edge rush, but their front seven, you can take advantage of it in the run game. And if the offensive line has half a decent day, it's not a pass rusher necessarily writing home against or writing home about either. So,
yeah, Boye Mafe, I have no idea how he's playing this year. There was definitely some things to like on his college tape. He definitely does have like a really good burst. But again, I have no idea how he's playing this year. Jordan Brooks, yeah, that was kind of a lot of people were shocked with that first round pick. The Seahawks, their first round picks are always quite confusing to people. But they liked him enough to let why am I forgetting Bobby Wagner walk in free agency. Tariq Woolen, there's a whole conversation back and forth. And I know he's got a lot of interceptions and stuff, but some of them seem like, okay, was that really a really good player? You were defending Tom Brady on that play, so not super impressive. But definitely he has much exceeded draft expectations, and he's definitely a physical freak. Quandre Diggs is definitely a good safety for sure.
He's good safety, yeah.
Yeah. Bruce Irvin, he's so washed up and old. Shelby Harris, I remember when he was with the Broncos several years ago, he was really good in that 2020 season. I have no idea if he's still playing at that level. Kobe Bryant, apparently
even if he is though, like, okay, Shelby Harris, let's say he's decent. You have Ford, Jefferson, Bruce Smith, Cody Barton. Like, okay, their front seven might have 2 or 3 decent to good players in terms of, Harris, Brooks, and Nwosu, but it's a mid at best front seven. And then the secondary, Mike Jackson, apparently per Nania, is getting targeted a lot and not playing very well. You have Quandre Diggs and Jonathan Abram as our starting safeties right now, which Diggs is good. Abram is terrible. He's a terrible safety. Tyreek Woolen, okay, obviously a good player, and Kobe Bryant, who's a rookie. So
that was Sauce's teammate, right?
Yeah, at Cincinnati, yeah. So the defense, this is an area I would love to have Nani on in terms of their their numbers and all that stuff, but I'm pretty sure at least of recent weeks they're like a bottom 5 defense in the league. So you're looking at an offense that has some good weapons in terms of Metcalf and Lockett, but they're a banged up team in terms of Lockett, Abraham Lucas, Kenneth Walker being banged up, Goodwin being banged up. So with a quarterback who is average at best, and as of recent weeks, I think he's like 3 or 4 turnovers in recent weeks. So you're looking at an average-ish quarterback to below average with a below average offensive group around him with a bad defense. This is a game that listen, at the end of the day, yeah, they might be okay, but if the Jets want to not embarrass themselves, let's not lose 5 in a row. I don't give a fuck that's on the road in Seattle with their fake 12th man. I know they're loud, but you put bleachers in any stadium, it's going to be loud. I hate that bullshit. And the fact that if you have bleachers and a domed-in stadium, any stadium's going to be loud in that situation. Now, yeah, maybe they're rabid, but give me the Steelers, give me the Chiefs, give me those type of fan bases, the Browns, or them all day. But nonetheless, Kyle, this is a team that the Jets should beat if they want to make the playoffs. Don't lose this game. 5 in a row, 6 out of 7 games, whatever it's been. It would be, to me, it's not necessarily a joke if you lose to this team because they are okay, but let's cut the bullshit and beat this team, please. They're not great. They're nothing to write home about.
I'm trying to think. The last time the Jets won in Seattle was, I think, the 97 season, 41-3. Yeah, they haven't played well in Seattle, to say the least, including that blowout during the Adam Gase era, 40-3. Anyway, I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but I feel like the Jets are going to blow one of these 2 games at the end of the year and miss the playoffs. I feel like I'm banking on the Patriots losing another game.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Jets are going to lose one of these 2. Is it going to be this one, or is it going to be Miami? They might be catching a break with Tua not playing, although he hasn't looked very good. Is it going to be this one? I mean, they're both on the road. They're not going to be easy games, but it's hard for me to think, oh, wow, Geno Smith is really going to give us a hard time. I mean, we watched so much Geno Smith tape, and he certainly wasn't good.
Regardless of what the Jets defense has done of late, they're still a top 5-ish defense in the leagues. You assume they're going to hold the Seahawks to below 17 points. So can the offense put up 17 to 20 points versus defense led by Mike White? To me, they can. Yeah, but I guess.
Dude, Mike White is such an upgrade over Zach Wilson. We can't understate that enough. And listen, that Bills defense, getting Matt Milano back, that was huge for them. This Seahawks defense is nowhere near the level of that Bills defense, even without Von Miller. So I feel like the Jets are going to score enough, and I want to pick the Jets in this game, and I'm going to pick the Jets to beat Geno Smith. And does that mean I got to pick against I got to pick the Dolphins to beat us based off of what I'm saying? I hate the Dolphins too.
You're looking at a game that's most likely going to get flexed too. If we win this game, our next game against the Dolphins is flexed on the Sunday night, most likely.
I don't think the Jets. And listen, if it's 5 in a row, I think Salah is safe no matter what. But dude, if he loses the last 6 games to end the season, he's definitely got to be put on the hot seat for sure.
If we lose this game, right, it's going to be 5 in a row and 6 out of 7, correct? No matter how much, and people say oh, all we wanted is the Jets to compete and all, which I get. But at the end of the day, it's not that way. Nobody would say, okay, 5-2, 6-3 to 7-9. We'll sign up for that. Yippee, we're 7-9. I'm not going to be happy with that because at the end of the day, Kyle, I said 8-9, 9-8, was what I thought the Jets would be, and I know we both settled on 8-9. You lose one of these next 2 games, it's the worst 8, and it's we can get into it because of injuries and all this stuff, but it's a very bad 8-9 if you lose one of these 2 games, and again you finish with 6 out of 7 losses or whatever it is. But let's not lose this game. It'd be embarrassing to lose this game.
When you consider it's the old Bill Parcells quote, right? That the real football games start post Thanksgiving. something like that. And it's like the Jets haven't been great since Thanksgiving. So, you know, as a coach, you want to build on the successes you have and minimize the mistakes you had earlier in the year. So if the Jets are getting worse at the end of the season, that's not a good sign. Despite, I know that people often quantify how good a team was based off of total wins and losses, but there is something to be said with playing better at the end of the season than the beginning of the season.
I'd much rather have lost 6 out of 7 games to start the season and we go on a run to end the season than start the season hot and end the year, 1-6, 1-7, potentially 2-5, whatever it's going to be. So I think winning these 2 games is huge for momentum into next year. But losing this game 5 in a row to a mid Seahawks team, listen, the Lions were impressive. They got waxed versus the Panthers. The Jaguars beat, the Titans and whoever else. But these
Cowboys.
are games you don't lose if you're trying to make a playoff or to make a statement. You started off so hot to end as shitty as they have, especially if you lose this game. You have a really bad taste going into your mouth next year. And it's almost twofold. Okay, yeah, Mike White was good for when he came in, but you lose to the Seahawks. Again, at the end of the day, they lost to the Vikings. They lost to the Bills. They beat the Bears with Mike White. You're going to hitch your future on the Jets going 1-6 and Mike White and trying to save your job a little bit. At that point, your seat's at least a little bit warm. So win the game. Win the fucking game.
Win the fucking game. Yeah. I'll say Jets 27, Seahawks
27.
Yeah, I think Mike White can score a point. I'm honestly the offensive line has been not blocking so well, and we've had some Michael Floor problems and stuff. So, for us to put up 27 on the road, that would be a feat. But I think we can do it with Mike White. I'll say 27 Jets, and I'll say 21 Seahawks.
Is it going to be raining in Seattle? I think every single Jets game rains. Even the Packers game rained for a little bit when I was there, I believe.
Ravens game rained.
I'm going to say, I'm trying to think of how, I'm going to say 23 to 16 is going to be the score. Multiple field goals. The Seahawks drive, they can't really finish. They get 1 touchdown, 3 field goals. What is that for the Jets? 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals, something like that. So I think it's going to be a little bit ugly, just because they're in Seattle, crowd noise, etc. Which, again, Kyle, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think Seahawks fans are overrated. You put bleachers in any stadium, they're going to be loud. To compare them with Seahawks fans, with Browns fans, with Steelers fans, with Packers fans, I don't think they deserve the respect they get, to be completely honest. Maybe I'm just salty because they have an arena or a stadium built to make sound. But 12th man's overrated. Fuck them. So nonetheless, it's like giving a stadium thunderclappers. You get at basketball games and saying, "Oh, they're loud." Yeah, well, yeah, you kind of built it that way. So, screw them, screw Geno, screw Pete Carroll, screw Jamal Adams. Jets win 23-16. Next week, stay tuned for when we're going to stream. I leave for vacation on Wednesday, Thursday, so I can't do a stream on either one of those days. So I'm most likely going to stream Monday, Tuesday at some random ass time. I don't know what's going to happen. But is there anything else in the chat? Let's see if there's anything. The Jets will lose only if Mike White has to, or if White has to leave the game. I hope you're right. This would be, again, going out and finishing the season even at 8-9, Kyle. Remember we said 9 wins would be disappointing. Imagine if we finish 8-9 after the start we had 5-2 to 8-9. So that's what 5-2 to 8-9. That's 3.
Especially since we were thinking the schedule softened on the back end.
3-7 to end the season. The last 10 games, 3-7. Not good vibes going to 2023. And then if you bring in Gardner Minshew and Mike White as your answers,
there's no way that they're going to sell this fan base on. Oh yeah, let's move on from the 2nd overall pick to Gardner Minshew.
Hey,
a guy who, by the way, Gardner Minshew was instrumental in helping the Jags tank for that all-time worst season, which led to Trevor Lawrence for the Jags. So,
yeah. Listen,
I thought when he got healthy at the end of the year, I was like, oh, they're finally going to win some games when Gardner Minshew's back. Boy, was I wrong about that.
Yeah. This year roster is probably going to be better than next year's team. Now, could you lose a few guys? Sure, but you're also getting Breece Hall back. You're getting ABT back. You're getting some really big pieces back. You might not be able to re-sign Quan, but how much of a difference has Quan been making in the last couple of weeks? I think you bring back Quincy Williams, maybe Quan's gone. You're looking at a different guy. You're probably looking at a new safety. I think next year's team healthy is better than this year's team. If you're talking about healthy, potentially. But this is where people like scamping out on quarterback. Like, oh, yeah, but we rather get, we need a linebacker and a safety. You go balls to the wall at quarterback. You figure it out from there. You don't skip out on quarterback because, oh, you need a safety. You get a quarterback. It's the most important position in sports. That's how I feel. You have to skimp out on safety, linebacker, whatever it may be. So let's see if there are any other chats. Weather is good for Seattle. Thank you, Rises of the New York Jets. Sunny and 45 degrees with a little wind. Okay, that's great. Talk about dedication. Love these guys. We love you, Happy Tanking. We smoking that. I already know the title for next week's stream, Kyle. Either Jets break the Seahawks jaw, or Geno Smith breaks the Jets jaw. That's what it's going to be. So hopefully we break Geno Smith's jaw. Kyle, any last words for the stream? I gotta go. It's almost 8:30.
It's a low blow, Joe. Not much. I had fun for the first time in a while. I don't know if I'll be on next week, being that what your schedule is, what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm going on a live stream tomorrow. New York Jets ground crew.
Oh, nice.
So
it's gonna be like
a 1 o'clock tomorrow. So
okay, maybe send me the link. I'll check it out. But
maybe
I don't think it's a low
like,
blow. Listen, at the end of the day, Geno Smith not paying IK and Pauly, whatever his name is, $600 for his plane ticket for a charity event he didn't show up was kind of a low blow. I don't think I delivered it. I think it's Geno Smith who delivered the low blow, hence him getting his jaw broken. Which I remember being in Pennsylvania on a vacation, and I think I was in a movie with my wife, and it was like Geno Smith jaw broken out for the year. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, bro. Like, in a movie, I was like, this is out of control. But nonetheless,
it's always something with this team, man.
Never ends. Mike White hurting his ribs. Miles Austin getting suspended for
we
gambling.
didn't even talk about that until now. Jeez,
ridiculous. It's literally always something. And of course, this is an exciting year. You finish the year 8-9, 9-8, but with no quarterback. Especially if we don't make I think Mike White has a chance if the Jets make the playoffs. The Jets win the next 2 games, he's a chance. They lose one of these next 2 games, it just can't be White to me. I don't think it'd be White regardless unless they make a deep playoff run. But what bad vibes to end the season on. And then we're talking about most likely the day the season ends. I'm looking up Carr stuff, but we'll talk. We appreciate everybody, and we will see you soon. Stay tuned to Twitter and just to YouTube in general. I will stream before I leave for Costa Rica. I just don't know when it's going to be yet. So we will see you guys soon.